Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto had the powers of the nine-tailed fox's tales part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Fire and smoke was the first thing he saw and screams were all he heard. The forest of Konohagakure was burning. Next he saw whole trees felled by a giant tail and groups of ninja being thrown around like leaves in a breeze. Bodies of fallen leaf ninja were lying everywhere as many more continued to fall. All of a sudden a giant paw fell in front of him and as he looked up, he saw piercing red eyes looking down at him and teeth that were the size of large trees. The giant head reared back and rushed forward, then everything went black. In an orphanage, a young boy suddenly woke up wide-eyed and breathing hard. The boy had strange whisker-like marks on his face and bright blue eyes like the sky after a storm. His hair was wild and untamed, as if a brush had never touched it. It was an unusual deep sun-colored rich blonde. He was an average height for a 4-year-old. The boy's name was Naruto, and he lived in the village hidden in the leaves, Konohagakure. He was a peculiar child. He didn't have any friends except the sandaime who visited him once in a while, the owners of the Ichiriku ramen stand and his teacher Iruka. For some reason unknown to the 4-year-old, he was always neglected by the caretakers at the orphanage, and the adults always hated him. He was a good little boy and polite, but the adults never looked at him with anything but hate and disgust. That damn dream again, Naruto thought to himself lying back down on the bed. As long as he could remember, Naruto had always dreamt of, to lack of a better term, a monster attacking the village, and this dream always woke him up at least once a week. Naruto had actually asked the Hokage what this dream meant, but the Hokage would always change the subject. After a while Naruto decided it was just another part of life and stopped asking. He walked over to a wall and checked what day it was. It was his birthday today, and although he didn't have any parents or many friends to celebrate with, he loved and cherished the time he had alone. This time however he saw the caretaker in his room. "Finally, we can get rid of you from the orphanage," said the caretaker in a tone that even Naruto could tell held nothing but disdain. After that she picked Naruto up and threw him out of the orphanage with what few possessions he owned and shut the door in his face. Naruto was sad and confused. He didn't know what he did to deserve this. He went trudging up to the Hokage tower to ask the sandaime if he could help him. The Hokage tower was several stories tall, and it was easily one of the tallest buildings in the village. It was at the Hokage tower that the Hokage, the leader of the village, his secretary, and his guards worked. This was where ninjas come to get their missions, and it was also the place where the Hokage had important meetings and did their paperwork. He was able to pass through easily enough as at this time of night there are no need for guards. After knocking on the sandaime's bedchamber doors, he heard the third Hokage get up and the muffled words of slave-driving secretaries and paperwork from hell through the door. The third Hokage was surprised to see him as soon as he opened the door. "What are you doing here at this time of night, Naruto?" he asked looking at the young boy. "The orphanage kicked me out, so I was wondering if you could help me find somewhere for me to live," Naruto replied. The sandaime sighed knowing this day was coming soon. However, he had long ago considered where he could put Naruto. He went back inside and got some keys. He said, "Naruto, here are the keys to apartment, can live there. You would just have to pay a rent which I will give a monthly salary for, which will also be for your groceries and clothing." Naruto squealed, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Naruto then headed to his new home. He saw it was in the middle-class district and he quickly went looking for apartment C2. When he found it, he saw it was an average-sized apartment near the market streets. He unlocked the door using the keys and entered. He saw that there was an average-sized living room. It had white walls. The kitchen was small, but that was expected as it was a single-person apartment. There was a bedroom for him with a decent bed unlike the one at the orphanage. This one was in decent shape. He checked the cupboard and saw a lot of ramen. Naruto got really happy at seeing the ramen. He loved ramen more than anything else except his loved ones in dreams. There was even a decent bathroom. Overall it was meant for a student studying, but Naruto loved it because it was his. Naruto put his stuff away for now and decided to arrange it tomorrow. He entered his bed and quickly fell asleep. The last thought going through his head was maybe things are getting better. 2 years later, things are not getting better. Naruto was running as fast as his 6-year-old body could. Once again he was being chased by the villagers on his birthday. It was also the 6th anniversary for the Kyuubi no Kitsune's death and the Yondaime's sacrifice. The Kyuubi no Kitsune was a demon that had attacked Konoha 6 years ago. It was unstoppable, and many shinobi had died in attempting to stop it. Then the Yondaime, the 4th Hokage, had used an intricate and forbidden technique to kill the Kyuubi. This technique however killed the Yondaime as a result. He did not know why the villagers always attack him on this date. Hell, he didn't know why he was attacked at all. He is always friendly to them yet they still hated him. He was sick of it, and on top of that he hated having to wear this stupid orange jumpsuit. It looked stupid with its white collar and orange color. He only wore it because he was too poor for anything else and it got him attention, which was what he wanted. That's why he had developed his mask. To gain attention and to keep himself from breaking in class he always acted confused and dumb, and outside in the village, he'd always be loud and yell out about his dream to become Hokage. He was snapped out of his thoughts as he heard the villagers yell out, "You demon, you killed our families. We will avenge our fallen comrades." He was always confused by what they meant when they said he was a demon or he killed their families. He would always think, "But I never did that and I never killed anyone." He was starting to get very afraid and angry because they were gaining on him with those various weapons, and he was angry that they were yelling at him and blaming him for no good reason. He was sick of it all, he just wanted to be left alone now. He hid in an alley up ahead, and then when the villagers passed by he ran into the forest. This forest was Naruto's favorite place to be. With its huge trees, placid meadows, large lakes with running rivers, and quiet remote areas, Naruto got to think about a lot of things usually, and he could calm down. He didn't know why, but the forest soothed him. The forest was so nice and peaceful, and it never judged him or hurt him. Right now though he was so angry he felt like breaking something. Naruto began to hit a tree trying to vent his growing frustrations. As he did this he started yelling, "Why? Why do the villagers always hate me? I never did a single thing to them." He never offended them yet they always hated him, they glared at him in the streets. Most didn't let him into their shops to get food or clothing, and if they did they charged outrageous prices for some piece of garbage that a starving animal wouldn't touch. He was so angry he didn't even realize when a flame flickered into existence on his hand. He kept on punching the tree in hopes of venting some of his anger and calm down. After a while he smelled the smoke though and looked at the dent he had made and saw the fire. He panicked because the villagers would blame him for the fire if it wasn't put out. He was so frantic and he kept thinking about water and where he could find some that he didn't even see the water appear and douse the flames until he looked at the smoldering ash-filled hole now visible on the tree. Now unlike popular belief Naruto was smart and quick-witted. He simply had stopped showing it when the teachers at the academy gave him really hard questions and never taught him anything. So he decided that if being smart didn't get their attention then becoming stupid might. He put together a theory. He believed that he had somehow caused the fire and water in his distress. He thought he'd better test it. He cupped his hands together while focusing. He tried to concentrate and use chakra like they were taught in the academy. It wasn't working. Naruto grew frustrated. He thought back to what he was feeling when he made the fire appear. He was really angry and he tried to bring forth that anger. He tried to remember all the times he was picked on in the academy, all the times the adults would beat and treat him unfairly. Suddenly, a flame flickered into existence between Naruto's hands. Naruto grew excited, but the lapse in concentration cost him and the flame dissipated. Naruto cursed himself and tried again, and soon he had a flame in his hands. After letting the flame die out, Naruto then tried to calm himself as he was concentrating on water when a drop of water appeared in his hands. He focused intently, and then the small bubble of water began to expand until it would fill a small cup. Naruto's concentration did not fade and he moved his hands around. The water bubble moved in conjunction with his hands, and Naruto took great delight in making the water move this way, and that as if it were the greatest thing in the world. It seems that my emotions affect my control over this unique power of mine. I need to be angry to call out fire, and I need to be focused and calm to be able to use water. I also need to use my hands to move and control these elements while focusing chakra and thinking about an element. I can just think of the possibilities there are if I can master this. Then Naruto had a thought, what if this is a bloodline? Naruto's mind went into hyperdrive at the implications of this bloodline. If I honed my power then I could have a signature technique which nobody else could use, if I did then I might be able to achieve my dream. Thought Naruto. The dream he tells everybody to become the Hokage was only part of his dream. The rest of his dream is to be acknowledged by the other villages and become a legend. He wanted to become the best ninja ever as well. He long ago wanted to be recognized as something other than a demon by this village. He didn't understand why he was called a demon either, but he resolved himself to find out. He also thought about his farce. He was sick and tired of people making fun of him because of his grades, and his Act 1 no my act gets people to notice me, but not the respect I want. Naruto sat down on the meadow, crossed his legs and arms and closed his eyes. Getting into his classic thinking position and began to think more on this. The people of the village respect the Hokage because he's strong and the best and protects them. So if I want to get what the old man does, then I need to quiet my act and get stronger. Then a depressing thought came to his mind, the problem is that no one at the academy or anywhere else in the village for that matter will help me. It was then that he had a thought, what if I left the village to train? I mean I'm not a ninja yet, so they don't have a reason to look for me. The more he thought about it, the more the idea seemed appealing. Leave the village for 6 years and graduate with his age group. When he came back, he could learn techniques outside the village and work on his bloodline in secret. He could even come up with his own jutsu. He soon had a plan for the next day. After another day of faking his life at the academy, he would break into and take whatever he found useful from the storage shed where the teachers kept what they taught with. Then he would sneak into the library and see what they had, then head to the Hokage Tower and leave a note for the old man to read and maybe fleece the place for anything good. Finally, he would get out of the village and leave for 6 years. He suddenly felt very tired. He guessed it was from using his bloodline. He needed a name for it as well. He'd think about the details on his way home. By the time he reached home it was nighttime and he barely had enough energy to lock the door before he fell from exhaustion. The next day he woke up and went to his closet. He saw the same dumb old orange clothing. He needed to change that in the future as soon as he left the village. He'd need some real clothes since he would stand out too much if he wanted to be a ninja. This thing screams kill me, colors, Naruto thought, pulling the zipper up. He ate some ramen and also decided that as much as he loved it, he'd need to change that as well, or he'd never be strong because he'd be malnourished, and he didn't want to be a weak, short kid forever. He then headed to the academy, but entered late to keep up his reputation as a goofball for one last time. His teacher Iruka looked at him and walked up to him, bonked him on the head, and dragged him to the front of the classroom. "Iruka-sensei, let go of me," said Naruto in a whiny voice. So far so good, he thought. "No, Naruto. Since you've done us the favor of being late, everybody will review the topic on chakra again." The class groaned and looked at Naruto with hateful, angry looks. Chakra topics were long, boring, and confusing. It really didn't help that Iruka had gone over this particular lesson a dozen times before. "But I don't want to, chakra is boring," Naruto complained in his best whiny voice. Iruka twitched for the 12th time that morning and yelled, "I don't care, Naruto, and now everybody will write a whole page on chakra after the review for homework." Now the class outright yelled obscenities at Naruto, except for Choji, Shikamaru, Hinata, and Shino, who all just sat there quietly, blushed, slept, or ate chips. Iruka yelled, "Quiet all of you. Now listen up. Chakra is the combination of physical energy and spiritual energy that is brought out by using hand signs. Chakra can be used to make seals, use jutsu, strengthen or speed up one's body, use bloodlines, use dijutsu, and in some legends create weapons. Chakra can be used in ninjutsu, the elemental attacks such as thunder, earth, water, wind, and fire. It can also be used in genjutsu, which controls the person's senses, allowing items to be hidden, damage to be caused, illusions to be put up, and in some very rare cases cause a person to become mindless. Chakra is also used in taijutsu, which is hand-to-hand combat, by increasing one's speed or strength in battle. Some prominent clans such as the Hyuga and the Uchiha clans use taijutsu such as the Byakugan and the Sharingan in sync with their taijutsu to help them in battle. Now whenever you use some chakra you must have an equal amount of physical and spiritual energy or else you will mess up the jutsu. To fix this you can use chakra control exercises. Some are tree climbing, water walking, and floating yourself or objects using chakra. Now most kunoichi have good chakra control as they have small chakra reserves. To increase your chakra reserve you must do work, training, and sparring to increase your chakra. Now did you all catch that? He saw Naruto sleeping. With his eye twitching yet again, Iruka hit him in the head and yelled at him about sleeping in class. Naruto, however, was thinking over what Iruka had said. That was a lot of useful information, even if I've heard it before. I now know I have to increase my chakra reserves, because if I got so tired from setting a tree on fire and a little bit of water, then I'll never be able to reach my maximum potential. Soon Iruka called lunch and Naruto set about his first objective. Instead of heading to his usual lunch spot he ran to behind the school to where a large silver shed was. It was where the teachers stored all the equipment they used in their lessons, from books to kunai. Naruto knew they locked their doors when not in use, but in less than a minute he had it picked and was inside. What Naruto found was better than he could have hoped. There were boxes upon boxes of kunai, shuriken, and seiban. Huge bookcases held books for the school Naruto had never even seen. There were explosive tags and training weights piled neatly on shelves, and barrels of small bombs in the corners. There were various weapons on the walls, from several Fuuma shuriken to a katana that the Chunin used for demonstrations. There were small round containers filled only with ninja wire, and even cases for food, blood, and soldier pills. In an open box Naruto could clearly see blank scrolls that could be used in a number of ways. Wow, the school is well paid. With that thought Naruto came out of his daze and began grabbing as much as he could and putting it in a large 3-piece backpack he brought. Naruto took as many books he could fit into it first. Next he took 3 sets of training weights and put some of the blank scrolls in his back pocket. He then started to take as many weapons would fit in the remaining space. All in all, he had 10 new sets of kunai, as well as 2 sets of shuriken and 1 foldable Fuuma shuriken. He stuffed one the pockets of the backpack with pills and another with bombs and ninja wire. He was about to leave when he turned around to look at the katana on the wall. "Well, I came this far," mused Naruto as he took the sword off its place and slung it over the top of the backpack. He left the shed none the wiser and quickly stashed his looted prizes in a tree he often hanged in. Naruto quickly returned to his classroom to await his next objective. As soon as class was out, Naruto ran all the way to the library. Due to the villagers ignoring his existence, he had been able to learn many of the villagers' schedules and he used this to his advantage. He knew the librarian who ran the place would be closing soon and that she always let the door shut itself while she was there. Just as Naruto reached his destination, he saw the librarian walking out of the building. Quickly as not to lose the opportunity, Naruto picked up a rock and hurled it at the door just as it was closing. The librarian never heard the rock lodge itself between the door and lock and walked away unaware of the ajar door behind her. After she got far enough away, Naruto quickly slipped into the building and shut the door. Not wanting to waste time, Naruto pulled a duffel bag from under his shirt and started to browse the shelves of anything that would teach him useful or powerful jutsu or how to survive in the wild and be a shinobi. He took various books on plants and animals, knowing that he could use some if he got sick or hurt while training. He grabbed several shinobi handbooks and managed to find an advanced Charka exercise book which listed many different exercises he could try. Naruto also grabbed a few books on necessary information from math and science to human anatomy and shinobi law. Naruto was determined to become as strong as possible and he knew that these books would help him with basic necessary duties anyone was expected to be able to do. Naruto felt he had enough after he grabbed a good-sized map of the various shinobi countries and quickly ducked out of the library before one of the next librarian on shift walked through the door. He ran back to the academy and quickly stashed the duffel bag with a backpack and started to leave the school when he literally ran headfirst into his teacher Iruka. "Naruto, what are you doing here?" Iruka asked, pulling Naruto up from the ground. "Oh man, Iruka-sensei must practically live here. I mean, school's been out a while, but what can I say that will get him off of my back?" "Wait, I know." Naruto quickly put on a false face and looked at Iruka. "Iruka-sensei, can you buy me ramen today?" Of course that's what he wanted. Iruka's sweat dropped, but nevertheless agreed. "Well, that took care of Iruka-sensei, and now all I need to do is get the note to the Hokage, get my stuff and get out of here," Naruto said to himself as he ran back to his apartment in order to get what he needed from there. Naruto burst into his apartment and grabbed a few things he needed. Since many of the stores overcharged him and even more didn't even let him in, he had never used the money the Hokage had given him much and he had saved quite a bit of money that, with a little sparse spending, could last him quite a while. He then raided the kitchen of any food that he could find that wouldn't spoil anytime soon. Even though he took mostly ramen cups, he did find some canned food and other non-perishable items for the road. "This should last me at least a few months, but eventually I'll need to take a job somewhere to keep up with my travels. But then again, there's always someone out there who needs a person with at least the basic ninja skills," Naruto said to himself, stuffing the last few bills into his frog-shaped wallet. Naruto was just about to leave when he saw a picture head on the window. It was one of him and the Hokage, Iruka, AM, and her father at the Ichiriku on his last birthday. The picture brought a sad smile to Naruto's face as he took it from its place and carefully folded it until it fit in his pocket. "Not many will miss me, but this will remind me of those who do." Naruto looked at the time and saw how late it was. He quickly wrote a note and left it on the small table in the kitchen, and as he stepped out the door took a moment to take one last look at his home before shutting the door quietly. Naruto ran on the roofs of the village to the Hokage Tower. He had just picked up the sack and backpack he had stashed earlier and was making a beeline straight to his last objective before leaving the village. As Naruto neared the tower, he brought all his past visits to mind. The tower of the village was well guarded at night, this was true, but there was one major flaw in the building. Right on the ground floor there was a small window that was broken and the only effort to fix it had been a loose board that was put there to cover the hole. The window was too small for an adult to fit though, but Naruto's size let him slip through easily and he used this to his advantage. Naruto took what he brought with him and put it under a bush before moving the board just enough to slip in. Naruto found himself in the basement, which he had come to know well due to his trips in the Hokage Tower. He quietly opened the door to see if any guards were about. Finding none, he headed straight to the Hokage library. Thanks to the Hokage chatter he had overheard from other ninja, Naruto knew that was where the most powerful jutsu were kept for high-ranking ninja to study and something they often referred to as the Forbidden Scroll that supposedly held very powerful jutsu that only a few could master. Something like that should be better hidden, Naruto mused to himself as he turned the corner that led to the room full of ninja secrets. Just as Naruto was about to reach the door, however, he heard someone coming down the next hall. Acting quickly, he opened the door and shut it just as none other than the third Hokage walked quickly down the hall. "I'm free. I'm finally free of that blasted work and evil secretary," Naruto heard the aged Hawk say as he passed the door and the footsteps faded down the hall. "It can't be that bad, can it?" Naruto thought as he turned around and started to search through the seemingly endless piles of books and scrolls. Let's see. Crap, boring. Seen it, Naruto thought as the pile of discarded paper started to grow higher and higher. Naruto found few things that perked his interest in the section that held Genjutsu, but found many things he was interested in throughout the ninjutsu, taijutsu, and kenjutsu areas of the library. Naruto knew his strengths and weaknesses and found he was terrible at Genjutsu because of his habit of putting too much chakra into a jutsu and the constant demand of concentration. He had a hard time maintaining anything harder than a henge. But he also, with enough work, he could easily make up for this. I suck at Genjutsu, but in order to reach my dream I will overcome this, Naruto said with utmost confidence and belief. Naruto took a few easy chunin level Genjutsu scrolls, but for taijutsu and ninjutsu, he took much harder scrolls that reached upper Jonin and Anbo level in some cases. The kenjutsu scrolls Naruto found to be very interesting, many of them contained well-made drawings of stances and the way to use the sword for its techniques. These are going to be a big help while I travel. I would probably be one of those people who just swing a sword wildly and hope to hit something if I didn't find these, Naruto muttered at the thought. The last thing Naruto checked out was the Forbidden Scroll, and he soon found why it was called that. With a serious face Naruto examined the writing. A lot of these don't just take a lot of chakra, they would kill me too. Now I see why the old man said this was off limits to everyone but him. I don't want to die doing some technique, so that means I'm limited in how many I can do from this stupid scroll. All in all, Naruto copied down only a few jutsu that he felt would help him without the messy affair of death. Then as quick as he came, Naruto returned any items he had taken out and carefully placed them as he had found them. The only sound that entered the hall as Naruto left was the door to the basement closing behind him. Naruto ran as fast as his body would allow him, which, considering how much stuff he was carrying, was a decent sprint straight to the walls of Konoha. It was late at night, and Naruto knew this was the perfect time to get out of the village, since the guards on duty were most likely asleep at their post. Man, the old man really needs to rethink the village defense plans. First thing I do when I'm Hokage is order anyone on night watch to have coffee every hour, Naruto muttered to himself as he quietly slipped by the Chunin on duty who was clearly off somewhere in dreamland. As soon as Naruto was out of the sight of the village, he pulled out the map of the shinobi countries to decide which way to head. Naruto found several places he did not want to go quickly, mainly the rock and lightning countries, since any conversation he had heard from other ninja told him they hated Leaf Ninja anyone from the land of fire in general. He very much doubted that him being a child would change the mind of a ninja who swore allegiance to either of the two strange lands. Naruto, however, had found a few places that he thought would be a little more accommodating to his present needs. One place was the land of waves and another the land of wind. Both of these two countries are either friendly or neutral to home, so these two will do for now, Naruto said to himself, picking the land of waves, seeing as it was closer than wind at his present location. Naruto picked up his speed and ran most of the night and into midday the next day, taking only short breaks to gain as much distance as possible from his home village, all the while being careful not to leave too many clues in case the old man did send someone after him. After nearly 2 full days of non-stop running, Naruto slowed his pace to a brisk walk and continued until mid-noon when he felt sure he was close to the border of mist. Looking around, Naruto found a tree with branches large enough that he could sleep on them without Ira falling out of it. This will do nicely, Naruto said to himself as he laid a sleeping bag he brought with him out on the branch, being careful to make sure it was well hidden from prying eyes below. What should I do now, Naruto muttered to himself before remembering why he left Konoha. Right, I need to work on my bloodline, Naruto exclaimed before walking away from his camp. Naruto walked to a place a couple of kilometers into the forest away from his temporary house. He needed to test the new Uzumaki bloodline technique secrets after all. After reaching a sufficient distance, Naruto surveyed his surroundings. It was a meadow with a stream nearby. It also had a place where he could make a campfire. He was surrounded by earth and air as well. It was the perfect place to test out his bloodline. He decided to try and make a fireball. He focused his chakra. He then used a tiger hand sign and focused on blowing out fire. He slowly breathed out, but it didn't work. He decided to try to get himself angry. He kept on remembering past occurrences where he was beaten up, thrown into dumpsters, his stuff was stolen, someone broke his stuff, he was picked on, etc. As he remembered everything, he slowly got angrier and angrier. He then blew out a small stream of fire from his mouth. He tried again, putting more chakra into it this time. He slowly blew out a small stream of fire that dissipated 1 foot away from him. Naruto sat down on the meadow, assuming his thinking position, and thought about the way he was doing this. It would seem that although I need anger, I also need lots of chakra and to control my chakra carefully so I can control it. I wonder if I can control my chakra using my hands. Naruto tried to blow out a stream of fire, and this time he cupped the fire into a ball. He made motions with his hands to move the fireball. The fireball moved with his hands. He then grabbed the fireball and proceeded to touch it. It didn't burn him. I am guessing that since this is my chakra it can't hurt me. If I were to throw this at something else though, He launched the ball of fire at the grass. It hit the grass, and the ball burst and started to burn the grass. Naruto then decided to try water again. He focused on his chakra and made a dog hand sign and tried to move the water from the stream onto the burned grass. He made motions with his arms and then pretended to sweep up water and throw it onto the fire. Throughout it all he was focused completely on his task. Slowly but surely the water began to rise and move toward the fire. Rotating his hands above the fire, he formed a decent-sized ball of water and dropped it, quickly dousing the fire. Naruto's face had sweat beads from the task, but his face was taken up by a huge smile. Naruto did the snake hand sign and focused a quarter of his chakra into the ground. He then proceeded to make uppercuts with his arms. He focused on the ground in front of him. He was however failing miserably. But if anger and calmness didn't work, then what works with Earth? He decided to think of Earth and just be focused and set on the task. He kept on making the uppercuts until he slowly saw the earth in front of him rise and jut out of the ground at an angle away from him till he couldn't see above it. He let go of the earth and watched as it crumbled into small-sized clumps of rock and dirt. He fell to the ground panting from how hard it was. He then sat and rested for a few moments. "This is harder than I thought it would be," Naruto said between breaths, but this just filled him with renewed vigor. One of the top things on Naruto's favorite list was a challenge, and no matter what it was he always beat them. After that he got up and tried to think of lightning. He focused on his finger and made a rooster hand sign. After that he focused on trying to get a spark on his finger. He tried to think of chaotic thoughts, as lightning was chaotic. He focused on using a tiny spark on his finger. Slowly he could hear a small crackle of electricity. He had the tiny spark. It was hard to control, however, very hard, and he could barely make a tiny spark. It was so hard to control the lightning, in fact Naruto had to move his head from a stray line of energy then shot at him, just barely missing his face. He would have to learn to control it the hard way, as when he let go it didn't just dissipate, it ran through his body, shocking him a little and making his already wild hair stand on end. Naruto thought about how that could be useful if he used this element in his taijutsu later on. He thought of doing one more thing before he started to train and increase his chakra reserves. He focused on the wind around him and closed his eyes. This time he did the rabbit hand sign. He focused on spreading his chakra out into the air that had just picked up, moving the trees gently. He then focused on making some wind currents around him. He tried to push the air around him towards him. He needed precisity and lots of chakra for air, as he had to spread out his chakra, and with so much air, he had to have in mind what he wanted to do. He focused and concentrated really hard. Slowly he felt a small movement in the air. It was a very small movement, but movement nonetheless. Naruto tried to move all the air at once, relocating some wind to move around him into the place where he was moving the wind from. The place where the air was going would move that air to fill any gaps. This way it wouldn't need to be pushed as much. It was easier and he could feel a slight breeze begin to pick up. He thought he might be able to make a whirlwind or even stronger storm if he had better control and more chakra. He decided to increase his chakra reserves. He started out by doing some push-ups, did 20 of them, then did some curl-ups. After 20 of those he did a lap around the meadow, which was a quarter of a mile in circumference. After that he decided to just jump around and do stamina training by doing jumps and flips. He did this all without using chakra to strengthen himself. He would work on that during taijutsu training when he was over. After that he did some jumping jacks. Finally he did 50 punches and 50 kicks at a tree per arm and leg. By then it was nightfall and Naruto was exhausted. Quickly eating a sparse meal and planning his path and schedule for tomorrow, Naruto fell blissfully asleep after he reached his temporary bed in the tree. Where the hell is Naruto Uzumaki? "I'm sorry Iruka-sensei, no one has seen him since the last day he was here," said one cowering student, as there was nothing worse than an angry Iruka. 5 whole days missing from the academy and not a single explanation. I should have guessed he'd play hooky to get out of that assignment, Iruka sighed to himself, knowing Naruto was probably running loose in the village somewhere when he should be here at the school, trying to get ready for the next graduation test. He knew Naruto wouldn't show up until he was dragged into the classroom, so he made his decision. "Class, I got to go get your wayward classmate, so just wait a minute and a sub will be in to start your lessons," Iruka said, causing everyone to moan after he shut the door. Every student seemed to want to voice his or her opinions about the latest Naruto had done to them and the school. Where the hell could Naruto be? "I don't care about him, but if I have to listen to this boring lecture, then so should he," exclaimed one very agitated Kiba in Yuzuka. "I don't know where he is, but it would be too troublesome to get involved. Just let the teachers handle it," replied Narashikimaru as he laid his head down to catch a few winks before the teacher got in. His best friend Choji Akimichi just continued to munch on his seemingly endless supply of chips. One Shino Aburam, well, he kind of just sat in his corner and adjusted his glasses. Humph, maybe the loser finally figured out he'll never become a shinobi, said one Sasuke Uchiha as he began him classic brooding method. You're right Sasuke-kun, he probably quit after he saw how cool you are. Said one very loud and very annoying fangirl named Sakura Haruno-cha. Now nothing stand between me and my Sasuke-kun. Inner Sakura yelled. Hey forehead girl. Stop sucking up to Sasuke-kun. Yelled an equally loud fangirl named Ino Yamanaka. What you say Ino pig? Screeched Sakura. You heard me billboard brow. Yelled Ino just before Sakura tackled her to the ground, starting yet another fangirl-induced catfight. As the other student egged on and shouted in the fight, sitting alone from everyone else was a shy girl by the name of Hinata Hyuga. She would often sit away from the other students due to her shy nature and her inability to express herself well. Her studies in school were average, and because of her clan's title of greatness, she was often ridiculed by other students. She did however find one thing she liked in the school, one blonde troublemaking prank-playing student named Uzumaki Naruto. He was the complete opposite of her clan and many people she knew. He was loud, energetic and rude, did not obey others often, and was in her eyes the most brazen, selfless, brave person in the school. Even when others made fun of him, all he did was smirk and shout out his dreams. She wished she could be more like him, so confident and carefree that she soon developed a crush on him and his charms. Ignoring the fight, she instead looked out the window by her seat, showing a grand view of the village and whispering, Naruto-kun, where are you? Where the hell could Naruto be? Haruka asked himself as he ran along the rooftops of the village, searching for any sign of his student. So far he had checked all his usual hiding spots from the Hokage monument to the park. He had even gone to Ichiriku in search of him, hoping to see him guzzling down his 27th bowl of ramen, but when he got there AM told him neither of them had seen him since their last dinner together. Now he was really worried about Naruto. As far as he knew, all he did was live on ramen, and if they hadn't seen him, then something bad may have happened to his missing student. What if the villagers know? Don't think that if anything happened to him the Hokage would tell me. Wait, I know. I bet he's at his house. Haruka thought, changing his path and reaching the apartment in minutes. As Haruka opened the door to the apartment, the first thing he noticed was that the apartment itself was intact, so the villagers hadn't broken in and attacked Naruto the last few days. The second thing he noticed was a lot of Naruto's stuff was gone, including a picture he had given Naruto on one of his birthdays, which he knew Naruto would never throw away or give to anybody. The third and final thing he found was his bed was made and obviously had not been used recently at all. What happened here? Haruka asked himself as he swiped a finger along a tabletop with signs of a thin dust covering showing on his hands. It was then he noticed two neatly folded up pieces of paper, one of which had his name on it. Picking it up and opening it, he read the letter obviously meant for him. Hey, Haruka-sensei. I knew you'd be the first one to come looking for me after a while. Sorry for missing your classes, but I needed some time to myself to get stronger on my own. After all, how can I become the greatest Hokage in history if nobody wants to help me get stronger than I am? Don't worry about me, sensei, after all you know I'll be back to pass my grade level in the Genin test. Sorry about making you, AM and her dad, and the old man Hokage worry about me, but leaving the village seems the only choice I have that will let me reach my goals. I took all my important stuff, so don't worry about the apartment, but just come every now and then and clean it for me, will you? Thanks a lot, sensei. Before I forget, take that other note to old man Hokage for me, okay? Thanks again. Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage of Konohaka. Haruka stood still, eyes wide open, mouth slightly hanging loose in shock. He had to reread the note again before he believed it was real. He quickly grabbed the other note before jumping out of the window, making a beeline straight towards the third's office. Lord Hokage. We have a problem. Yelled on very out of breath Haruka as he ran into the office of the single most powerful man in the entire village of the Leaf. Said Hokage looked up at him from the mountain of paperwork that threatened to fall off the desk with a slight scowl, showing now was not the time to talk. Haruka, unless this is a life or death situation that could spell the doom of the village, I am not in the mood to talk right now. Someone has taken a large number of books from the library and the Ninja Academy needs a lot of new supplies, which it shouldn't since I just gave them it last week. All of this has given me more paperwork than unless it is an emergency. Please leave me to at least try to finish some of this work, the Hokage said as he reached for a new piece of paper. But Lord Hokage, Naruto's been missing from the academy for the last 5 days, and when I went looking for him at his apartment, I found a note saying he was leaving. Hokage-sama, he has run away from the village. Haruka yelled, causing said man to stop what he was doing immediately. What? Yelled the Hokage as he stood up from his chair, knocking all the paper off his desk as he did. Haruka, why didn't you go look for him sooner? Yelled the Hokage. Well, it's not uncommon for Naruto to skip 3 or 4 days of school before we see him again, and I knew if anything bad was going to happen, he'd run to you first, explained Haruka as he tried to defend himself as best he could. Well, where is he now? The Hokage asked in barely held anger. Near the leaf mist border. At you. Due to Naruto's sudden sneeze, the rabbit he had been hunting suddenly jumped away from the trap, running in the opposite direction. As Naruto stood up from the bush he had been hiding in, his face went from shock and surprise to anger and frustration, which he shouted for the entire world to hear in one word. "Kuzo? I don't know where he is, sir, but he did leave you this letter," Haruka said as he brought the letter out of his pocket, only for the Hokage to snatch it out of his hand and yell, "You only tell me this now." As the Hokage shredded the envelope and began to read his message. "Hey old man. My letter got to you and you want an explanation why I ran from the village. Well, it's actually quite simple really, so I can get stronger. I mean, how am I going to become a strong ninja if nobody wants me to and everyone just hinders my learning and growth? All the teachers there except Iruka-sensei seem to want to hold me back. Not to mention that the villagers seem to want me dead for some reason. I don't know why they do it and probably never will, but I want to make some things clear to you. First, I'm going to come back in about 6 years to graduate with my age group, so don't worry about me coming back. Second, don't send anyone after me. You know how well I can get away from people in the village, and I can only do it better outside the village. Third, I'm not a ninja yet, so I don't think it would look good to send a ninja after a civilian, a kid no less. Fourth, I kind of borrowed a lot of stuff from the library and academy, so I hope nobody minds that. Fifth, you really need to work on guarding that scroll in your library. I mean, I got to it and got quite a few jutsu written down before I left, so you might want to find a new hiding place for it. P.S. Don't worry. I only took the ones that need a lot of chakra, not the ones that kill the person who uses the jutsu. I mean, how dumb is that? Well, that's all I can think of, so just so you know anyway, take care old man and tell Iruka-sensei and the Ichiriku crew that it'll be back before you know it. Don't you dare give that hat to anyone while I'm gone old man, or else it'll test my new bloodline on you when I get back. Yours truly, Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage of Kanehakure. As the Hokage read this he went through a myriad of emotions from concern and sadness. Naruto, has the village really been so bad? To shock and anger Naruto, how could you be so reckless? In the end though he ended up just sitting down in his seat and giving a long drawn-out sigh. "So what do we do, Lord Hokage?" asked Iruka after giving the Hokage a moment to gather his thoughts. Sarutobi just chuckled and asked, "Well, what can we do, Iruka? After all, he is a child, and like he said, if we send someone after him and another village finds out, they'll start asking questions as to why, and we really don't need to draw attention to Naruto," to which Iruka nodded his head, seeing as it was a valid point. Also, if we were to bring him back I doubt he would stay here long enough to explain himself, since when he puts his mind to something it's like talking to a mountain to convince him otherwise again. Haruka nodded his head, knowing how hard-headed Naruto could be when he put his mind to something. If only he were like that about his ninja studies, Haruka said, causing both men to chuckle a bit at the thought. This ended when the Hokage looked back at the letter in his hand as he reread a few lines. "In any case, I believe that this trip will actually help Naruto to succeed in becoming a leaf ninja. We know that he is coming back if his letter is any indication, and he is still hell-bent on getting my job," finished the Hokage as he picked up a few papers from the floor. "Well, what should I tell the rest of my class?" Haruka asked, helping the Hokage and placing a stack of papers on the desk. "They'll want a reason why he won't be in class anymore, you know." "Tell them what Naruto said, that he's gone on a training trip and will be back in time for graduation," replied the Hokage with a small smirk on his face. "But Lord Hokage, what about the council? When they hear about this, I don't think they'll be as easy to deal with like my students." All the Hokage did was wave his hand and reply, "I will deal with them when the time comes. In the meantime, I have to get this paperwork done, and you have to get back and do your job as a teacher to your remaining students." Iruka smiled and bowed before he disappeared in a cloud of smoke, leaving the aged Hokage alone once again. The Hokage smiled as he read the note once over and said to himself, "Naruto, I hope you are safe wherever you go and get strong like you want to be, but remember what I have taught you about being a good person as well. Those who have the power to change life must do so for the better, otherwise they will end up an empty shell of what they once were." The smile ran away from his face until a grim frown replaced it as he remembered the one person he knew who symbolized this all too well. "The one question I have is what Naruto meant when he had a bloodline. I know for a fact he doesn't have anything close to a bloodline, so what could he have meant? Well, I guess that is a mystery for another time. Now I have to try to get some of this work done." However, as the Hokage began to look at the papers in his hand and Naruto's note in the other, he came to one very unpleasant conclusion, which everyone in the tower heard as his voice rang out. "Naruto, you're the reason I have all this work." This of course made everyone in said tower stop and wonder why the Hokage was yelling about the demon this time. "Naruto, when you get back you better be the most powerful person in history, because if you aren't, nothing will spare you from my wrath," thought the Hokage as he crushed the note in his hand. On a boat headed to Mist. "Achuo. Hey kid, are you getting sick? Cause if you are, then you're going to have to get off this here boat," said one very large man who was obviously in charge of said boat. No, it's okay. I'm just not used to the ocean and my nose is a little sensitive right now is all." replied Naruto as he walked away from the side of the boat and back to his small quarters for the ride into mist. Someone must be talking about me, Naruto said to himself as he crawled into bed and smiled as he pulled out a book on controlling chakra. Well, bring them on. They'll just end up like everyone else. As he began his training. Now let's see, the leaf chakra exercise starts with "God damn that old man." These are the words Naruto yelled as disembarked from the boat onto dry land after his short trip to Wave. Thanks to that old bastard, I barely got any training done at all. The old man, as Naruto put it, was none other than the ship's captain who throughout the trip had constantly told him off for doing ninja training on the boat while it was en route to Mist. Considering Naruto's eagerness to get stronger and improve himself, he had shown remarkable restraint in what he had been training in. He had merely trying the wall walking exercise as it was a recommended way of improving chakra control and increasing one's chakra reserves, which Naruto found the leaf control exercise, though interesting, was sorely lacking in any real use due to his already massive reserves barely being used up by such a simple exercise. Unfortunately, many people on the ship, captain included, found a boy walking on the side of the moving boat and up walls and ceilings to be annoying and a little freaky no matter the reason. So it ended up that the captain had given Naruto had a choice, either wait to get off the boat at the end of the trip to train or learn to water walk really fast. In the end, Naruto was forced to just read his books in his quarters while they waited to make land. He did manage to go through some of the academy books and the anatomy book he took from the library. He found many ways his bloodline could actually be used in a fight by reading that particular book, as it had large sections on chakra pathways and how they worked with the body in combat. I should have learned some water jutsu or maybe used my bloodline and given that bastard a taste of his own medicine, Naruto thought as he began to chuckle to himself loudly, causing many people to back away from said blonde Inkus. He was a few kunai short of a full set. Well, at any rate, the first thing I should do is get someplace to stay, then I need to get some food, Naruto said to himself looking into the sky, seeing the sun had run far past the noon mark. However, at that moment as Naruto began to walk into town, he heard a woman scream out, "Help! Thief!" As Naruto looked over his shoulder, he saw a man running away from a woman carrying a purse in one hand and a small knife in the other. And as the man started to run in his direction, Naruto heard him call out, "Move it, you blonde-haired midget," causing said blonde hair to stop right in the street. What did he just call me? Naruto asked in a low and dangerous voice, his hair shadowing his eyes. He slowly dropped the duffel bag and backpack on the ground as the man got closer and closer, not moving an inch from his spot in the street. Just as the man was near him, he foolishly once again said, "Don't say I didn't warn you, runt." As the man thrusted the knife towards Naruto's back, only for Naruto to turn on his heel and catch his arm. Before anyone realized it, Naruto had used the man's force against him and threw him through a store's window, knocking him out as Naruto shouted, "I'm not a runt. I'm still growing, you backwater idiot." Naruto then pulled the sword from his hip where he had tied it, sheath and all, and jumped through the broken window as his voice was heard from inside, "What else you going to call me? An imp dwarf little person, I'll still kick your ass from here to Wine Country." Naruto proceeded to beat the snot out of the would-be criminal, all the while yelling things that would make Anko and Ibiki blush like a certain pale-eyed girl. 5 minutes later, Naruto climbed out of the store window with the purse in one hand, the sword in the other, and looked around. His clothes were ruffled and cut and he was covered in dust, and everyone on the street was staring at him like he had just grown a second head. He answered them the best way he could, "What the hell you all looking at?" As the crowd dispersed and mutterings of crazy blondes and kids these days rose in the air, the women who owned the purse walked up to him. "Thank you so much for saving my purse. It has all my money I have been saving for this month's groceries, and if you didn't stop him, I don't know what to do." "No problem," Naruto said, smiling as he picked up his backpack off the ground and slung the duffel bag over his shoulder. It was some good exercise beating that guy, even if he really wasn't all that tough. Naruto smiled as he finished tying the sword back on his hip. "Well, thanks anyway. Do you live around here?" "I've never seen you before," she asked as she checked her purse. "No, actually I just got here on a boat and was looking for a place to stay while I was here when I helped you," Naruto said, gesturing with his thumb to the man still in the store. "Well, I can't let you spend your money at the inns here, the prices are outrageous," she said, smiling. "You can stay with me and my family while you're here, we'll even cook you a nice meal." "Oh no," Naruto replied quickly, "I could never," but before Naruto could finish his sentence, his stomach decided to talk for him as it growled loudly. Having the decency to blush as the woman giggled, he meekly said, "Well, maybe just for tonight." "Well then let's go," she said, but as they turned around a hand landed on Naruto's shoulder. It belonged to the man he had just finished beating up. "You little punk," the thief weakly said, seeing as Naruto had done a great job kicking his ass, to which he now sported a black eye, a dozen bruises, 3 missing teeth, and a shoe print to the forehead. "Now you're really going to." But just before he finished that last word, the back of Naruto's fist connected with his nose, sending him back onto the floor with a new injury consisting of a broken bloody nose. Some people just don't learn, Naruto muttered as he told the owner of the store to charge all damage to the thief before running after the woman. The woman quickly asked, "Oh, I almost forgot, what's your name?" "I don't think you want to be called little punk the whole time you're with us," she said smiling. "My name's Naruto Uzumaki and it's a pleasure to meet you." Naruto trailed off, to which she simply smiled and answered, "Tsunami, it's kinda loud, huh?" Naruto asked as they stood outside a house where somewhere inside something was making the loudest racket that people could hear from several houses away. Tsunami sighed and simply said, "Inari must have woken up." Suddenly the door busted open to reveal a very scruffy looking man who, upon seeing Tsunami, began to rant, saying such things as, "Thank God you're here and hasn't stopped crying for an hour." Tsunami, however, just ignored him as she walked into the house and walked up the stairs where the loud crying was coming from. It was at this time that the man noticed Naruto and asked, "Who the hell are you, kid?" "I'm Naruto Uzumaki and don't call me kid." Naruto responded indignantly, "And I guess I'm a guest or something." Tsunami-san offered to let me stay here for the night because I saved her purse from some second-rate purse snatcher. The man looked Naruto over and he wasn't impressed. Naruto was dirty and his orange jumpsuit was torn and dirty from the beating he had given the man earlier. Must be poor or something, he thought. There is no way in hell anyone in their right mind would wear something that god-awful. As Naruto shifted in place under the man's eye, all the man did was snort and mutter, "Crazy daughter, heart's too big for her purse." He then looked at Naruto, said, "Name's Tazuna, now get inside before I lock you out." As soon as he was inside, Naruto put his stuff against the wall and looked at what would be a temporary residence. It was a neat little house with 2 floors and the basic essentials. All in all, Naruto found it to be a cozy little place he could come to like if he stayed long enough. Nice place you have here, Tazuna-san," Naruto said as he sat down at a table where Tazuna joined him. "Humph, thanks brat, but I gotta say the newest roommate is a real pain," he replied as he watched Tsunami walk from upstairs into the kitchen. "Who?" Naruto asked, only to turn around, jump back in surprise and fall over in his chair. Standing not 10 inches from where he had been was a boy no older than 2 holding a stuffed dog. "Inari," Tazuna said, looking at the boy, "don't be rude and scare guests like that." All the boy did in return is stick his tongue at the old man and run into the kitchen where his mother was. "Sorry," Tazuna apologized, "my grandson, he's 2 years old and going through his I don't need you, I'm independent phase." "You don't say," Naruto grunted as he pulled himself from the floor, "but if you're the grandfather and if I'm right, Aunt Tsunami-san is his mom, who's his dad?" It was then that he noticed Tazuna's sad expression. "I'm afraid," Tazuna paused, trying to get the words to come out, "he's no longer with us." Realizing his mistake, Naruto suddenly found the tabletop very interesting and mumbled, "I'm sorry," shaking his hand. Tazuna replied, "Forget it brat, how were you supposed to know?" A long silence soon followed. The awkward moment was broken, however, as Tsunami walked into the room carrying 4 dishes in her arms as Inari clung to her leg. Leaning close to Tazuna, Naruto whispered, "I thought you said he was in his independent phase." Hovering the side of his mouth, Tazuna whispered back, "He's also in his I'm clingy to mommy phase." It's all very confusing, to which Naruto sweat dropped and almost fell over again. "I hope you boys are hungry, I made extra helpings of dinner tonight." She smiled, laying the food on the table. Tazuna's face did a complete flip from sad and depressed to happy and excited. "Brat, wait till you try her cooking, I swear it's the best in wave." After that was said, Tazuna began to shovel the food as fast as he could. "Oh dad, you say that about everything I cook," Tsunami giggled as he wolfed down his food like a starving dog. "But it's true." Tazuna yelled before resuming to devour his dinner quickly. All Naruto did, however, was sit and stare at it, which Tsunami noticed. "Is something wrong, Naruto? You haven't touched your food. Do you not like it?" No, nothing like that. It's just I don't know what it is," he stated quickly, not to offend Tsunami. "It's hayashi rice, you've never had it before?" Tazuna stated curiously. At Naruto's indication, he had not just tried it. Yubaka finished, Tazuna getting the last few pieces of rice off his plate while thinking, how can he not have had this stuff before? It's a common dish in any house, so doesn't matter, none of my business. Naruto hesitantly took a spoonful of the strange food and after a moment took a bite. For a minute he did nothing but sit there with the spoon still in his mouth. Then, faster than even Tazuna had, Naruto began to devour the strange food. "This is great," Naruto yelled between spoonfuls of rice. Utaniki had never eaten anything before both Tsunami and Tazuna thought as the young blonde inhaled the food in front of him. Soon, between Naruto's and Tazuna's appetites, the dinner was soon finished off, and while Tsunami took care of the dishes while Inari followed her, Tazuna began to strike up a conversation with Naruto. I see," Tazuna said, "so you're from a ninja village and you left to go on this training journey to get stronger." As Naruto nodded his head, "Yep, that's exactly why I decided to leave my village." "That's a good story, brat," Tazuna said while looking at Naruto with lazy, suspicious eyes. "But aren't you a little young to be traveling alone like this?" Naruto stared at him a little till he replied, "It's not like I didn't tell them I was leaving, besides if I'm going to be a ninja I have to get stronger." "Fair enough, brat," Tazuna replied, "but what about your parents?" Bet they didn't like this idea, Tazuna asked, smirking as he took a sip of his drink. All Naruto did was smile in return and say, well, that's not a problem, I don't have any. This of course caused Tazuna to spit out what was in his mouth and fall onto the floor. When he regained his composure, he changed the subject as quick as he could. So, brat, you said something about being a ninja, right? Naruto nodded his head at this and began to tell Tazuna all about being a ninja, from the kinds of jutsu he had seen and heard about to the way missions were given out and paid. And at the end of it he yelled, but I don't want to be just any ninja. I want to be the best ninja ever. Even more, I want to be the leader of the village, the Hokage. Tazuna gave him a smirk and said, you got spunk, brat, but what kind of ninja wears that? As he pointed to Naruto's orange clothing, I thought ninjas were supposed to wear dark clothing, not that monstrosity. Naruto looked at his cloths in disgust and said, it's all I got to wear. Definitely a orphan, Tazuna thought as he watched Naruto fuss over his cloths. Looking at a clock on the wall, Tazuna simply said, getting kind of late, so you and Inari better get upstairs and get ready for bed. Naruto nodded and ran up the stairs with a chilled. Tazuna looked over at Tsunami and asked, you had what he said, huh? As Tsunami nodded. That explains everything he's done up till now, Tazuna sighed as he rubbed the back of his head. I just wish there was something we could do for him, Tsunami said with a sad face. Tazuna however smiled and asked, how about we, and began to whisper in her ear. Her face brightened immediately and she said, Dad, you may be old, but you're still as clever as a fox. Tazuna scoffed at this and mumbled, I'm not that old. The next morning, after a quiet breakfast with Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari, Naruto began to gather his things and make for the door, only to run the family waiting for him outside. So brat, you're leaving, huh? Naruto only nodded and replied, got to get going, got a lot of places to see, and only a few years to do it. Tazuna smiled, well, we couldn't let you leave without some parting gifts, now could we, brat? Naruto sighed and asked, you're never going to call me by my name, are you? And what you mean by gifts? Tsunami walked up to him and gave him a slip of paper and a few coins. A curious look from Naruto told her he didn't understand. It's payment for saving my purse. I heard what you talked about last night, about how ninjas get paid for each mission they do for someone. Well, it's not much, but I'm sure when you get back to your village, I'm sure that note will help get you a fair payment. Naruto opened the small note and found it was like the ones people who hired ninjas would write to show the mission had been completed. He put it in his pocket and smiled brightly at Tsunami in thanks. Then Inari walked up to him, handed him a small bento box, and said, enjoy it while it lasts. He turned around and walked back inside with Tsunami. The only thing he says to me the whole time I'm here, and it's barely a sentence, Naruto said as he looked at the small lunch in his hand. Look at it this way, brat, at least he talks to you, Tazuna said before he tossed him a brown package, which Naruto caught clumsily. I found a couple of my old cloths in the attic last night, so I thought you needed them a lot more than I did. Tazuna gave him a smirk, but Naruto just looked at him suspiciously. Look, old man, I may be young, but I'm smart enough to know this was your idea, so why help me? Tazuna looked at him seriously and simply said, I know the life of a ninja is hard, so you need all the help you can get. Besides, true strength comes from others who care for you. Naruto smiled at this, he sounds just like the old man back home. Naruto then noticed Tazuna was looking over his shoulder to see if anyone was watching before reaching under his shirt, but this gift is between you and me. Tazuna quickly and quietly slipped Naruto another, smaller package. Just don't open it till you're older. After Tazuna gave Naruto directions out of the village and watched him till he disappeared into the crowd, he shut the door and walked into the kitchen to find Tsunami playing with Inari. You think we will ever see him again? Tsunami asked as she saw him walk into the room. Yeah, Tazuna said, smiling, something tells me we're going to see him again. It was a few hours after Naruto left the house that he found himself in a small forest. He quickly took out the other package that Tazuna had given him. No way am I waiting to see what he gave me, Naruto said as he gently tore the brown paper from the give, only to find a book. Picking it up, he read the title to himself, Icha Paradise, Wonder what it's about. Opening the bright orange book, he began to read the first few lines, his face growing redder with each word. The land of waves earned its name well. Consisting of a chain of islands, it often experienced the worst storms possible, tidal waves, storms, and floods that were not uncommon to the isolated masses of land. However, it had earned another name as well. It was also known as the Hidden Mist, a land shrouded from view from the cool air offshore, flowing over the warm ocean surrounding the land. This created many problems for travelers and ships trying to find their way. Naruto, however, was only just learning how annoying it could be. The hell all this damn fog come from? I finally learned some jutsu and get some time to train my bloodline. The very next day I wake up in this. Naruto shouted this as he used his sheathed sword to clear a path and tried to find his way out of the thick brush he had somehow wandered into as he traveled in the thick, never-ending mist. I can't even read my scrolls anymore, if I do they'll get soaked. Not to mention my book, Naruto said in a depressed sigh. I was really looking forward to rereading that chapter with Asami Haim and that leaf ninja who saves her from those bandits. It's true, after he had regained consciousness from excessive blood loss, Naruto had sworn off reading that book, well for a while anyway. He had constantly remembered the few lines in his head that he had managed to read before passing out, and his curiosity grew and grew till he couldn't stand it anymore. Soon after that he started to read the book again. He found despite it being such a perverted piece of literature, it was surprisingly well written, and while he swore to himself he would never become a pervert like some other men did, he did start to have more appreciation for girls than before. And yes, it had been about 2 months since Naruto left Izuna and family's house, and he had thrown himself straight into his work as soon as he felt he had traveled far enough from the small town. He had taken a crack at the jutsu he had copied from the Forbidden Scroll, but had only managed to get 3 so far. The first he had mastered was the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, which he had hands down in 1 day's time. He found while it was harder to make a academy-level Bunshin, he could create dozens of Kage Bunshin clones and not even feel tired. He made the conclusion that with his tendency to overuse his chakra, he overloaded the normal Bunshins and made it a priority to learn the minimum amount of chakra for any jutsu he learned. Although he knew he had massive reserves of chakra that he probably never run out of, he figured it was better safe than sorry to not waste as much as possible. The other 2 jutsu however, took about a week to learn properly. The first being Bunshin Daibakuha, which if used properly allowed a Bunshin clone to explode. However, Naruto at first had trouble controlling the clone's explosive power. He had nearly blown himself apart several dozen times while practicing it. By the time he had learned it, he had abandoned what remained of his orange clothing and started to wear some of the clothes Izuna had given him. He was glad he now had something he could call a wardrobe consisting of a white shirt, black shorts with plenty of pockets for his stuff and black sandals. The final jutsu he had finished learning was Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, which allowed him to turn a single shuriken into 100 or more, depending on how much chakra he put into it. As for his bloodline, he had worked with what elements he knew he had. He found that with elements like wind and water, he could very easily control the way they moved, whereas with fire, earth, and lightning, he had to concentrate a lot more or risk losing control while using it or doing nothing at all. But by a stroke of unheard of luck, Naruto had even found a new power when he really needed it. He found that he could control plants. It was a good thing I found out when I did, Naruto said to himself as he reminisced about that day not so long ago. Flashback, I'm so damn hungry. This was the shout Naruto let out as he dragged himself down a dirt road in a seemingly endless field of what could barely be called trees. He had eaten what remained of the food from home and hadn't eaten much of anything since 3 days ago. Coupled with the intense physical training he had been putting himself through recently, his hunger had grown considerably. However, he had little luck in finding anything edible at all. In fact, most of the plant life he had been passing so far was either dead or dying by the look of the trees and shrubs around him. Leaning himself against one of dying trees, he used a trace amount of chakra to stick to the bark or risk falling over. He looked at it and absent-mindedly thought to himself, this is an ashy tree, if it were alive, I could get some fruit from it, but gripping one of the thin branches close to him, he broke it off easily. Looks like this one will be dead really soon, if not right now. Where have I seen one of these trees before? Naruto wondered to himself before smiling at the memory. Oh yeah, Hiruka-sensei showed me one of these when he took the class on that trip before I left. Thinking to himself happily about how Iruka had helped him get the fruit from the tree and sharing it with his favorite teacher, Naruto never saw the tree slowly start to grow a new branch as it twisted and turned its way down to him like a snake. Well, that's enough of that, Naruto muttered to himself as he turned around. I better whack. Tai. Naruto never got to finish his sentence as he just ran his head right into the newly grown branch. Ow. What hit me? Naruto shouted as he rubbed his forehead gently, trying to lessen the pain. When he finally regained his composure, he found a new branch right in his path. What the hell, that wasn't there a second ago. Looking closely at the branch, he found that unlike the other ones he had seen, this one was alive. However, more important to him at the moment, surrounded by delicate white flowers, there was a large orange orb hanging from the branch. Is that? Naruto asked himself, not believing his own eyes as he tentatively grasped a fruit and pulled it off the branch and held it in his hands. It took another minute before Naruto's brain reacted and he shouted, it is. It's an ashi. He began to devour the fruit in huge bites, and in seconds all that remained was the core. Naruto savored the refreshing taste of the fruit in his mouth as its flavor brought his appetite under control. Now with something in his stomach, Naruto began to try to find out how a nearly dead tree, which up till a moment ago was about ready to break apart, could suddenly start producing fruit. Let's see, this tree was certainly dead a moment ago, Naruto muttered to himself as he walked around it, looking at all sides till he was standing right back where he started from. Placing his hand against the tree he continued, then I put my hand against it and remembered Iruka-sensei showing me a tree like this. Naruto stopped in mid-thought as it suddenly dawned on him what had happened and a huge smirk took over his face. Then flashback. I'm glad I found out about this new power of my bloodline when I did. I don't think I could have won much farther without something to eat. Naruto mused to himself, smiling now that he could make his own food if need be. While he was thinking of all this, Naruto's hand finally found the edge of the forest he had been looking for, and it even seemed that the fog began to lift. Unfortunately, he found that it was also the edge of a steep hill that was far too risky for him to try to climb down from, seeing as how wet the ground was and offer no support to any weight put on it. Well, at least now I'm out that damn forest, Naruto said, looking down the hill to find what looked like from where he was a hot spring, if the steam rising out the water was any indication. He was surprised to find hot springs out in the middle of nowhere like this, but he wasn't one to look away from an opportunity like this. Well, looks like my luck's changing. Naruto smiled as the thought of taking a nice hot bath passed in his mind, and he leaned a little more to get a better view of his new destination. However, luck is fleeting, as at that moment Naruto's foot put a little too much weight on the soft mud of the hill, and the inevitable resulted as it crumbled beneath him and he fell down the embankment, all the while cursing and yelling obscenities as his sword fell from his grip and a strap from his backpack containing all of his ninja gear broke, letting it roll away into a bush. Kuzo. God damn it. Son of a bit. Splash. After his trip downhill came to an end, Naruto found himself enjoying that bath a lot sooner than he would have liked. Dragging himself to the edge of the spring with his eyes closed, he started grabbing for anything he could use to get the water from his eyes. His hands brushed over something his mind registered as cloth. Thinking it was his, he used it to wipe his eyes off so he could see. Naruto soon wished he hadn't, because at that moment he found the cloth he had used to wipe his eyes was not his. What he had in fact used was a green sleeve from what he could tell was part of a kimono. Naruto had seen all the cloths Tazuna had given him and not one of them was a kimono. Well, if this isn't mine, then that can only mean, Naruto thought, only to freeze as he had a splash from behind him. Slowly, Naruto turned around to find someone suddenly come from under the surface of the spring and turn their head, so they were looking over his or her shoulder at him. But he knew as soon as he saw the face it was a girl. Naruto completed his thought as said girl, who looked about his age, slowly widened her eyes upon seeing him. While he could only see her back and, fortunately for Naruto, a towel covered her modesty, he couldn't but help but let his eyes wander down her face to the most he could see. Suddenly realizing what he was doing, he developed a small blush on his face as he shook his head slightly and thought to himself, why did I reread that damn book Tazuna gave me a second time last night before I went to bed? Shaking the thoughts from his head, he tried to focus on not getting the beating of a lifetime as his eyes once again focused on hers. Both of them stayed like that for what seemed like hours when it had really only been a few minutes. Breaking the tension in the air, Naruto shyly said a hi. Naruto's words seemed to bring her out of her shock as her face suddenly became as red as a tomato and Naruto could only hope she took this well. Of course she took a stranger suddenly joining her in the bath and grabbing her clothes as well as one could have expected. Ah. Pervert. Her scream was heard throughout the spring as Naruto vainly tried to escape from harm. He leapt out of the water and as soon as his feet touched the ground he ran as fast as his legs would carry him into the forest, only to stop a few feet away as he felt something sharp fly past his face and cut his cheek. Turning around slowly he saw somehow above the girl, there were what appeared to be dozens of needles floating in midair. Oh no, she's a ninja. Naruto knew the only thing more dangerous than a pissed off girl was a pissed off kunoichi. Naruto looked at the girl again to find a wicked smile on her face and suddenly, as if on command, the needle shot towards him. Holy shit. Acting quickly and determined not to die, Naruto dropped down and punched the ground while forcing chakra into his fist, creating a pillar of earth and mud in front of him that just in the nick of time grew large enough to stop most of the needles as they impacted on the improvised wall while the rest flew past him. Naruto leaned against it and slowly sank down to regain his breath. It was a close one, didn't think I was gonna finish that in time, hell didn't know if that was going to work. He looked to his side and saw a few of the sharp needles she had attacked him with embedded in his only means of defense fall loose. He picked one up as it fell to the side of where he was crouched down and found it was surprisingly cold to the touch. But this is cold as hell. Wait, is this? Naruto took it between two fingers and snapped it like a twig. This is made of ice. Naruto smirked. Clever. She somehow turns the water and moisture in the air to ice and can use them like weapons. That's how she attacked me so fast, but making a cross-shaped hand seal that could be the flaw. If she need water to make the needles, all I got to do is make it away from the spring. There's not much moisture in the air deeper in the forest. The girl watched the mound of mud intently. She knew that her last barrage of ice needles hadn't even touched their intended target thanks to him somehow making that mud rise up and protect him. But it was only a matter of time till he made his move, and that's when I'll get him. Nobody gets away with peeking at me if I have anything to say about it. Suddenly a cry of Cage Bunshin no Justu. came from behind the pillar as a cloud of smoke exploded out covering the mound, and copies of the boy suddenly began jumping out of the smoke in all directions. Acting quickly despite her surprise, the girl began showering the blondes with needles, causing many to puff out of existence. But it seemed to get her nowhere fast, because as soon as one was destroyed another 3 took its place. Then she noticed out of the corner of her eye that 3 blondes were running into the woods. Throwing 3 needles at them, she saw as one jumped and avoided the needle intended for it, only to take the one aimed at the middle in the back and disappear into smoke. To any civilian it would have looked like chance that one clone would jump only to get hit by something else. However, to the trained kunoichi there was only one reason that happened: it sacrificed itself to save the original. She jumped over to where her cloths were, and as soon as she grabbed them, jumped into the trees after her targets. The last 2 Narutos were running as if the devil himself was right behind them. They had managed to get away from the crazy ice-throwing girl and entered into a small clearing, stopping momentarily to catch their breath from the long sprint they had to do in order to escape. "Oh man. I thought I was going to die back there," one Naruto said between breaths as he leaned a hand against a tree. "You know, this was entirely your fault," the other Naruto half yelled as it leaned its back against the same tree. "What did you just say, you stupid clone?" the first Naruto exclaimed, grabbing the other one by the shirt. "You heard me, dumbass," the other Naruto said, grabbing the other's shirt as well. "If you didn't pull shit like that back there, then we wouldn't get into situations like this. It was an accident and you know it," Naruto yelled back. The 2 glared at each other in anger until the second one looked to the side and suddenly pushed the other out of the way while yelling, "Look out." The clone was suddenly pelted by a half-dozen senbon and after falling to the ground puffed away into smoke. The one remaining Naruto looked up and on a tree branch, saw the girl he had accidentally caught bathing fully dressed in the kimono and had senbon between each finger of her hand. "Aw, crap." Naruto turned to run only to get pelted by the deadly needles in his arms and legs. Falling onto his side, he heard the girl land onto the ground and walk up to him. Turning his head to stare up at her, she asked him in a voice laced with anger and the promise of pain, "Any last words?" However, the girl was taken aback as the boy smiled and replied, "Yeah." Poof, and he did just that. Suddenly the boy exploded into smoke, leaving only the senbon to fall to the ground. The girl stared openly in shock as the one she believed to be the original was actually another clone. It suddenly dawned on her that he had managed to get away from her and she would not be able to get her revenge. She began shouting in anger as she realized all this, never noticing she was being watched from a bush a good distance away. Naruto watched the spectacle of the girl make a fool of herself with a smile as she cursed perverts and him in particular. "I wonder if all girls are this crazy," Naruto thought to himself. His musing, however, was cut short as he heard from behind him a twig snap and then a sharp hit to the head knocked him out. Naruto slowly began to regain his consciousness. As he did this, the pain in his head returned and he remembered something had hit him before he had blacked out. He began to try to move only to feel he had been tied to something with rope. He also felt a dull pain in his shoulders and upon trying, found he could not move his arms side. "Just my luck, Zabuza-sama. He's waking up." Naruto's eyes shot open at the sound of that voice, and when he looked up he saw the girl he had ran from sitting in front of him with a bag of senbons in front of her and an evil smile on her face. He looked behind her and saw that all his ninja gear was piled neatly a good distance out of his reach next to a small fire. He then saw from the corner of his eye someone get up. A tree blocked much of his view, but he could clearly see an arm reach out from the shadows and picked up with ease the largest sword Naruto had ever seen in his life. The light from the flames making the sharp edge of the chunk of metal that could barely be called a blade all the more intimidating as it was pulled free from the ground. And as the man stepped out of the shadows, Naruto became even more nervous. He was a very dangerous looking person with bandages covering his face from his nose down. He had sharp eyes, that of a killer's, and with a sword like that, Naruto knew this man must be a shinobi and probably a very strong one at that. Naruto looked at his situation from a strategic standpoint. "Let's see, I'm tied to a tree. It looks like there are needles in my arms to cut off my chakra and my movement. There is a pissed off kunoichi and very scary shinobi who are watching my every move, and I lost all my ninja gear, which is now in the hands of the crazy ninja, holding me captive. Yep, I'm screwed. Zabuza-sama, what are we going to do with him? Whatever it is, I say we make it slow and painful," the girl said, gleefully pulling sharp senbons from the bag and held a few in each hand, ready at a moment's notice to use them. Ignoring her for the moment, the large man walked right up to Naruto and looked at him in the eyes for a minute before saying in a rough voice, "Haku, go find some more firewood for tonight." The girl turned in shock and was about to argue with him, but the look in his face told her there was no arguing this command. She sighed and shot one more angry glare at Naruto before she walked off into the woods, leaving Naruto all alone with the sword-carrying man. Once the girl was out of sight, the man looked at Naruto straight in the eyes once again before saying, "Okay now kid, drop that stupid mask of yours." Naruto looked at him like he was crazy before he asked, "What mask?" The man grunted and said your face may make you look like a happy idiot, but when I looked into your eyes, for 1 second I saw something completely different, so drop it or else. He finished this statement by gripping his sword's handle harder than before and hefted it over Naruto to show his threat was true. Naruto sighed before he let his head drop slightly. Just enough so the man couldn't see his face. But when he raised it, it was completely different from the happy-go-lucky idiot he had portrayed himself to be. Those eyes, the man thought as he looked into Naruto's sharp, steeled eyes that seemed to take in every detail in front of him, but at the same time seemed so full of sorrow and pain. His eyes are just like Haku's when I found her, so one as young as him knows the world isn't what it seems to be, that it can be cruel and uncaring for even a child like him. Putting these thoughts aside for the moment, he got right to the point with his question. I'm only going to ask this once, did you knowingly look at Haku or was it an accident? Naruto shook his head wildly before saying, yelling, I swear by the Hokage of the leaf. It was an accident. The man began to laugh slightly as he shoved the sword into the ground and said, so you're from the village hidden in the leaves, are you? Naruto's mouth was wide open, shocked before he asked, how the hell you know that? The man reached behind him and pulled Naruto's stuff to his side. You don't find an average person carrying this many ninja tools, and you just said yourself that by the Hokage of the leaf, so from this, I think you a ninja one about to get stronger or something, seeing as how you don't have one of these, he said, pointing to his hit I-8. Naruto's sweat dropped at his remarks. I can't believe he guessed everything from just that. Naruto began to mentally berate himself for such a stupid mistake. I really need to learn to keep my big mouth shut. Suddenly the man sat in front of Naruto and said, you're lucky I decided to not let you be turned into a pincushion runt. Haku seemed very keen on doing that. You know it's not the smartest thing peeking on girls. Despite the sentence that had just been spoken, Naruto's brain had only registered one word out of all of them, runt. Who are you calling so short he wouldn't measure up to a grain of rice, you know, eyebrow freak with an overgrown butter knife. Naruto yelled as he struggled against the rope, kicking his feet in the man's direction. When I get free, I'll show you who is comparable with a flea. Zabuza's eye twitched at that. I didn't say any of that. As Naruto continued to yell and scream obscenities, Zabuza grew more and more annoyed. Shut up, brat, or you'll be even shorter to the ground. Naruto's anger grew at Zabuza's choice of remarks. No second-rate ninja is going to tell me what to do. Naruto yelled, making the man even angrier at him. Listen here, brat, my name is Zabuza Mamachi, the demon of the mist. This made Naruto stop and look at him. Heh, that's right, soon this little shinobi wannabe will be begging me to spare him, Zabuza thought smugly to himself. Naruto, however, got a look of confusion on his face. I don't think I've heard of you. This of course made Zabuza almost fall over. How can you not have heard of me? Zabuza of the Bloody Mist, master of the silent killing style of swordsmanship, who single-handedly killed a class of ninja graduates without any hesitation. One of the 7 swordsmen of the mist and an A-ranked missing nin for attempting to kill the Mizukage. And you say you have never heard of me? At Naruto's indication, he had not. Zabuza let forth a stream of words that could have taught Tei a thing or two. Naruto meanwhile watched in fascination as Zabuza looked like he had lost his mind. When he finally calmed down enough, Naruto asked, so, you're trying to tell me you're a ninja who can use a sword? That's great. You could teach me how to use mine. Zabuza turned and stared at him with a blank expression. And why would I do something like that, brat? I'm not interested in teaching little children tricks to show their friends. Zabuza's dismissing attitude ticked Naruto off to no end. Oh yeah, then what about that girl who hangs out with you? Why would you take her with you and not me? Zabuza seemed to zone out at Naruto's words as he stood up and started to walk away. Zabuza sank down in front of the fire and stared at it intently, poking it with a stick. She's a special case, she unlike you is of use to me. She could the last of her kind with her Keki Genkai, and I intend us her talents to help my plan to take over Kurigakure, the village hidden in the mist. His gaze hardened as he stared deeper into the fire, seemingly lost in a trance with the dancing flames. Then, and only then, when that idiot of a Mizukage is killed, will people like her be able to live happily, and that pointless witch hunt of a civil war will be avenged. Naruto looked on as Zabuza seemed lost in his own thoughts before saying, I may not know what happened, but I can tell you that training me will not be a waste of time. Drawing Zabuza's attention, Naruto continued, I do not want to waste your time or mine for that matter, I only wish to become stronger than I am now. So please, train me to use my sword, and I will help you to reach your goal. Will you do? Naruto finished with determined eyes that met Zabuza's head on. That is my promise to you, and I never break a promise to anyone, my Nindo won't let me. All my life, I have been looked down upon. My village hates me for a reason I don't know. But, I have had to live with that every day for 6 years. Zabuza's expression went from intrigue to understanding, knowing the story about how something like that all too well. I left my village to become stronger, that is true, but I want to do this so I can prove to everyone that I deserve their respect and admiration by protecting them as a shinobi, even more as their Hokage. Naruto watched as Zabuza seemed if he was torn between two thoughts and decided a final push was in order. Besides, I have my own Keki Genkai, it's probably as unique as hers, and I think I'm the first to have it, at least to the best of my knowledge I am. As long as I serve you, it will be yours to command. Zabuza was now very intrigued with this information. If he does have a bloodline, and it's as good as he says it is, then it will make my promise all the easier to carry out, Zabuza thought, at the prospect of too powerful bloodline at his disposal. Well brat, what's your bloodline called? Naruto looked thoughtful for a moment. That's a good question actually, I haven't thought of a name, yet Zabuza's sweat dropped at this. Naruto closed his eyes in thought, and after a few minutes seemed to come to a decision. Its name is Butai Kitsueki, Naruto said in a proud voice. Element blood, huh? Well, that's certainly an interesting name. Naruto nodded. Think of it, 2 unique bloodlines at your use, you could complete more missions faster, meaning more money for you to finance whatever you're doing. Before Naruto could say anything more, Zabuza interrupted him. Brat, before we go any further, think carefully about your decision. Naruto stared at Zabuza with a questioning face. There may come a day that while you're under my wing that you will have to kill someone for reasons you don't know, can you do that? Zabuza asked, watching for Naruto's reaction. Naruto looked Zabuza straight in the face. When I decided to become a shinobi, I knew there would come a day that eventually I would have to take a life. I know full well what that means, but Naruto said as his face became one of determination. I will decide who should die, and even then only if I have no choice. Zabuza seemed to think this over in his head a bit before saying, if I let you train under me, then I won't take it easy because you're still young, you'll probably die the first week of training. Naruto gave a genuine smile at this. I said I wouldn't have it any other way, Zabuza-sensei. Blade, we have an understanding then, Zabuza said as he took Naruto's sword and put it with his stuff. Hey. What the hell are you doing with my sword, Zabuza-sensei? Zabuza looked at him and replied, you are going to get no sword training until I think you are ready, and until then you're on a strict workout of weights, physical, and mental training. Naruto's sweat dropped as he watched Zabuza take his personal backpack and drop pound after pound of weights from the pack onto the ground. Naruto had been wearing the weights he had swiped from the academy, but they were nowhere near what Zabuza apparently had planned for him. Then the thought crossed Naruto's mind, Zabuza-sensei, how are we going to tell that crazy girl I'm going to be traveling with you? Zabuza seemed to smile under the bandages. Haku was slowly walking back to the camp, a bundle of wood under each arm. It had been a while since Zabuza had given her the task, and she was sure that he had killed the boy while she was gone. Serves him right for peeking on me, she thought as she started to hear laughter in the clearing up ahead. She smiled knowing Zabuza had taken care of her problem. As Haku walked into the clearing, she wore a bright smile on her face. Zabuza-sama, I'm back. Where do you want the wood? Zabuza looked over his shoulder and pointed next to him. Put it over here, Haku, you find enough. Hi. She smiled as she walked up next to him. I found a lot not far from. She cut her sentence short as soon as she was standing next to Zabuza. Thanks to her new position next to him, his back no longer obstructed her view past him, and what she saw shocked her. There was the boy who had caused her so much embarrassment, untied from the tree and sitting across the fire from Zabuza, as if he was an old friend. Naruto stared at her with a smile and said, Haku-chan, can I help you with that wood? In response, her mouth went slack, her eyes went wide, and the wood she held in both arms fell unceremoniously to the ground. Is that a no? Naruto asked curiously as she found her ability to speak again as she pointed at him. What the hell is that perverted bastard doing untied from the tree? Language, Haku. Zabuza said lightly in mirth of the situation. I decided to let young Naruto here train under me in swords as long as he can. I think he will make an excellent member of our little group, don't you? Shaking her head wildly she wailed, no I don't. Naruto pretended to take a look of shock to his face. Why not, Haku-chan? Is it something I said? She was instantly in front of him, gripping the neck of his shirt tightly and yelled, you know damn well the reason why. And who said you could call me Haku-chan? Naruto pointed over her shoulder and replied, Zabuza-sensei did. Haku gave Zabuza a glare to which he just shrugged and said, what? If we're going to be together a while we should all be close, right? Besides, Haku, I think you might actually get to like him a lot more than you think. You're already fighting like a couple, Zabuza teased while smirking as they froze in place staring at him. Both Naruto's and Haku's lit up like a tomato at his last words. They looked at each other and quickly jumped apart, looking in opposite directions. They screamed, you're insane. Zabuza's laughter filled the clearing once again as he watched the two avoid each other's gaze like the plague. Seeing as the tension in the air needed to be broken, Zabuza decided to try to please everyone at the same time. Tell you what, Haku, I'll let you be in charge of his dodging and avoidance training while he's with us. In fact, I'll let you handle Taijutsu lessons too. Sound fair to you? Haku looked at him thoughtfully for a minute before once again that sickeningly sweet smile came to her face, and Naruto, upon seeing it, knew whatever training was going to happen with her was going to be hell. Suddenly Zabuza's sword slammed down in front of Naruto, startling him as he saw how close he was to losing his legs. Well brat, welcome to Kenjutsu 101, or as I like to call it, Zabuza's training from hell. Zabuza said, staring down at Naruto like the cat who had cornered the mouse. Naruto however had only one thought in his mind after this stunt. I take back what I said earlier, now I'm screwed. I'm skipped to 1/2 years. You know, you were a lot harder to find than I thought you would be. But then again your men weren't exactly as forthcoming with information as I thought they would. Naruto said as he stepped into the shadowed entrance, a ruined and broken shrine, the only light filtering from the moon outside through the broken windows and various small holes in the broken roof of the spacious room. It was illuminated enough that Naruto was able to see his target sitting across the other side of the room, a huge man with a beard wearing shambled armor, obviously gathered in pieces and thrown together, that made him all the more intimidating. He had a crazed look in his eye as he held a long polished sheath in one hand and a cup of sake in the other. What the hell, I said, for that pathetic village to gather its valuables for tomorrow's daily offering, and they sent some little runt after me. I don't know whether to laugh or be insulted. The man said with a grin as he threw the sake cup over his shoulder and stood up, nearly reaching the ceiling in proper height. I really don't care what you think at this point, Naruto said as he slid the door shut behind him and stepped out of the shadows. Naruto was now as tall as most 8-year-olds were. He had grown his hair out longer, to which a short ponytail that ended at his neck was tied. His wardrobe had changed dramatically, to which he now sported a black shirt and pants that were tucked into regular black shinobi sandals and fingerless gloves that ran up his elbows. His kunai holder was tied to his leg just above the rim of his shoes. A white cloak covered much of him, but one could clearly see his katana jutting from inside the cloak, so only the handle was visible. The one thing of all this however that was most noticeable was a white shinobi mask that was nearly identical to a certain copycat ninja's, except for the color that now hid his mouth and nose from view. Naruto's hair and eyes seemed to glow in the moon's light, almost making him look like a demon, as his eyes were much brighter than usual. Not like it matters much anyways, seeing as I have to fulfill my contract with the village you've been terrorizing for the last month and make sure you don't ever come back. Whatever feelings a 2-bit crime boss wannabe like you has about this is of no consequence to me. Naruto pulled the cloak slightly to the side and grasped the handle of his sword in his right hand, pulling it free of its black sheath, the moon's light dancing along its perfectly sharpened edge. Normally I don't like killing. If I felt like it, I would give my target a chance to walk away, seeing as how many are wanted dead for the stupidest reasons, but you're one of the few that I actually think the world can do without. Don't you agree, mass murderer Gakkai Kiryu? The man grin widened as he heard his name. Well, so the little child knows who I am. And yet he willingly sought me out, very brave and very foolish. Naruto just stared at him. I'm interested to know how you found out who I really was, seeing as I haven't told anyone, even my men. My actual name. Naruto gave the man a bored look. I found a lot about you from my sensei's contacts. Seems you made your first appearance in Grass Country where you slaughtered a whole farming community in one night. You killed a lot of innocent people there, mostly women and children if his sources are right. Then your trail of corpses led you to a port city where you killed a boat owner so you could get to Wave. Eventually you formed this gang of bandits from local small-time criminals and the like. I just can't figure out why you'd go from murder to thievery. Care to tell me why before I help you pass on to hell? Naruto asked, watching as the man began to snicker insanely as he pulled a strange sword from the sheath in his hands. It barely even resembled an actual sword, the top was shaped like a cleaver, and what looked like teeth from a Daisuke saw covered the edge of the blade from the top of the blade all the way to the hilt, but what was even more disturbing was the amount of dried blood on it. The presumably once pristine blade looked as if it had never been cleaned, even thin caked on deposits of the fluid could be seen in several places along the serrated teeth. This guy is a lot more dangerous than the average bounties abuser sensei has me tracked down. I can't take his fight as lightly as I had hoped. I got to say, Brad, whoever your sensei is has pretty good sources. Yeah, I killed those people, and I enjoyed every drop of blood they let fall down to the last scream they let out while I did. But that doesn't help pay the bills, you know, so I thought up this idea while carving up my first victim here in Mist. Why don't I gather some lowlife scum like me and raid some villages? I get to have my fun and some cash on the side. Gakkai said in a smug voice, proud of his plan. I wish you could have seen the faces those weaklings down in the village gave me when we first got there. It was an amazing incentive killing a few to set an example for the rest. I can't wait till they give us all they have worth taking, and I cut the rest of them up before I take my men to the next village, Gakkai said in an excited tone as a huge grin took over his face. And don't demean what I do with the term mass murder. I think myself more of an artist. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. An artist, huh? Yeah, an artist, Gakkai said as he ran his finger along his blade's edge. Every cut, every piece of flesh that is broken is a work of art on the canvas that are my victim's body. Outside they are so hideous. I just have to show the world their pure inner beauty. He sighed as if in a wondrous dream before turning eye to Naruto. So now he suddenly gripped his sword and charged Naruto at a surprising speed, his blade lifted over his head with both hands. How about it, kid? Want to be my latest masterpiece? Naruto swung his sword up just in time to catch his blade on the teeth of Gakkai's weapon, just inches from his shoulder. This guy is fast for being so big, strong too, it's taking all my strength just to keep my blade up. Naruto forced his blade against Gakai's blade, creating small sparks as he rolled to the side pulling his sword with him. His sudden movement caused Gakai's weapon to crash to the wooden floor, creating a hole where Naruto had just been standing. Haha, so the little cockroach can fight back huh? I can tell you're going to be especially beautiful when I cut you open. Gakai's insane smile widened as he ripped his sword out of the floor and turned to face Naruto. Come on, fight me little cockroach, and let's see who has the better blade. Down on one knee while using the sword like a crutch, Naruto stared at Gakai as one of his eyes twitched. I'm getting really tired of all the short jokes. Naruto rose to his feet and let his sword hang loose in his hand so the tip touched the floor. He slowly walked toward Gakai, with each step he gained speed till he was in a straight run, dragging his sword behind him with one hand, cutting into the wooden floor, leaving a trail behind it. As Naruto got closer to Gakai he swung his sword catching Gakai by surprise as Naruto began to fight back harder than before. Whereas Gakai had brute strength, Naruto had speed and knowledge, and in this fight, Naruto seemed to have the advantage. Naruto's blade seemed to flow from strike to strike, each hit wasting as little effort and energy as possible. It looked as if Naruto was dancing a well-timed dance with a deadly intention. Naruto's attacks began to force Gakai on the defense, eventually ending up with Naruto's sword locked with Gakai's, neither of them giving an inch to the other. What's wrong Gakai team, you wanted me to fight back right? Or was that all talk I heard? Gakai's only response was a grunt as he tried to gain the upper hand of the struggle. Sensei might get upset if I take much longer, so I think I'll end this now. Ha! As if you can brat. Gakai confidently boasted your pathetic toothpick of a weapon can never beat my. Gakai's words were cut short and his face went from arrogant confidence to complete shock when he saw Naruto's sword start to push harder against his own, creating a small nick in the bloody blade. It started to slowly grow from a nick in the metal to a full-blown crack. No. He's breaking my sword. How is he doing this? Then Gakai saw something out of the corner of his eye just before he felt a blunt impact of Naruto's sheath that was gripped in his free hand to his ribs. The sudden, unexpected hit pushed Gakai to the side of Naruto and as he fell pulling his sword with him. The force exerted on Gakai's weapon finally became too much as it fractured like ice and severed into two pieces. The head of the blade went flying into one of the walls, while the rest remained in his hand as he fell to the ground. Nothing more than a slanted piece of metal remained on the hilt. Naruto stood there for a moment, his sword and sheath in hand, held exactly where they had struck just seconds ago. He finally let his extended crossed arms fall to his sides as he turned to face his opponent. Every part of a blade is a weapon, even the sheath. Ninjutsu, the art of the sword and swordsmanship. Naruto stated, that is what I use. You on the other hand is someone who swings a chunk of metal hoping to hit something. Naruto slid the sheath back under his cloak. You see Gakai, the difference between you and me when it comes to our blades is that you don't have a purpose for it while I do. Naruto said as he walked up to the now injured man who was doubled over holding one side of his body in pain. You became obsessed with blood and death, you let it consume you. Naruto watched for a minute as Gakai struggled to breath on the floor. I have had to kill as well, but I have a reason for it. I do it to help those who hire me to do so if I see fit to carry out the mission. I do it to help my sensei and friend to reach their goals. I do it so I can protect my precious people. Naruto said angrily as he stood in front of Gakai, weapon in hand. Because of your bloodlust, you became weak and your sword reflects that. Your will was weak while mine was strong, plus you really didn't take good care of your sword at all. Naruto gripped the handle of his sword tighter as he stared down at the man before him. So my pure blade broke that defiled piece of garbage soaked blood like a twig. Naruto took a breath and calmed himself. I should finish you off here and now, but I think the village will want to do that themselves. Gakai seemed to cough in response. You're right, I was a fool to challenge you. Gakai pushed himself up from the floor with one arm when suddenly he thrusted his other hand out, stabbing Naruto with what was left of his sword in his stomach. Gakai's insane smile returned to his face. Hehe, kidding. I can't believe you fell for that. Naruto stood there, eyes wide as tears started to fall from his eyes. That's right, brat cry, it's going to make this all the sweeter when I take you back to that weak village in pieces and show what happens when you mess with me. Now show me all that beautiful blood of yours, ha ha ha. It was then that Gakai noticed something strange, he wasn't bleeding. His shirt was becoming wet, but he could tell it wasn't blood, but water that was soaking his shirt. Looking up at Naruto's face, he was shocked to find more water than possible was flowing from his eyes, and what's more, a smile on his masked face. Suddenly Naruto exploded into water, soaking Gakai as he stayed there in shock. The hell exactly, Gakai heard behind him. He turned around only to see Naruto in mid-fall from a jump, sword raised overhead and aimed right at his head. I'm sending you to the one place you deserve. No. I won't die by some weakling like you. Anything else Gakai had to say was lost however, as Naruto landed to the side of him and as he brought his sword down, he curved it so it cleanly severed Gakai's head off of his shoulders. Akai's body collapsed to the floor hard while his head rolled a foot away from it, his face still frozen in terror. "Oh, and by the way, I'm not weak," Naruto said to the now lifeless body. "It's just if I used a technique Sabusa-sensei and Haku-chan taught me from the start of our fight, then there wouldn't be anything left to show you were dead. Then how would I prove I completed the contract?" Naruto re-sheathed his sword and began digging in his cloak looking for something, finally pulling out 3 pieces of paper at least. "I got to use the Mizubushin technique Sabusa-sensei taught me." Naruto threw 2 in opposite directions, so they stuck to the walls before he bent down and put the last one onto the corpse's back. "Well, I guess I'll end this with a bang, man, cleaning up the remains is so lame." Naruto tore the bottom of the paper off, which caused it to start to slowly burn. Naruto got up and as he started to walk to the door, stopping for only a moment to pick up the head of his bounty before he was ready to leave. Naruto calmly walked out of the shrine and started to trek down the stairs leading to the village below. A minute later the burning paper finally ran out, then boom. The shrine erupted into a massive fireball that lit up the sky. Naruto turned for a minute and watched as the flames engulfed the old building quickly, and as the embers began to rise into the air, he turned back around and reflected on his bounty as he walked. "Well, that was more boring than I thought it would be." Naruto sighed. The hardest part of the whole thing was actually finding the bastard. "That was a lot of work," Naruto mused to himself. "I guess these guys were better organized than I thought," said, as he walked past several men who had stood in his way to reaching his target. They were strewn around all over the steps, some were held down by tree roots, more were up to their necks in the ground, others had electrical burns on them courtesy of Naruto's bloodline. Some even still had weapons in hand from when Naruto first encountered them. Naruto however had spared them death, seeing as he would only get paid for Gakai's death, he saw no point in ending the others as well, as long as they left the village alone. Not to say he went easy on them, he had given them the beating of the year, being especially hard on a particular thug who had insulted his height. He had the honor of being thrown into a tree and whipped by branches for nearly 5 minutes. You did good, brat, I got to say you sure know to swing that blade. Oh, and how to bring the house down. Hahaha. Naruto sighed. What the hell do you want, Kyuubi? I'm not in the mood to trade insults right now. Naruto felt as the fox a dark grin in his mind. Since I'm stuck in your pathetic body, there's not much else to do. Naruto shook his head lightly at Kyuubi's response. The fox was always doing this, trying to insult his container if only to rile him up. Naruto had never had a day's peace since he had first found out about the fox during a training exercise with Zabuza and Haku, not that he was surprised. In fact, finding out about having the fox in him wasn't as much a shock to Naruto as one would think. To him it just answered a lot of questions as to why his village treated him the way it did. No, the real shock came from what else Naruto found in his mind. Flashback. Zabuza-sensei, why are we doing meditation? I thought you said we were going to be doing an essential part of swordsmanship. Naruto asked as Zabuza, Haku, and himself sat under a tree. The most dangerous weapon a shinobi possesses is not something you can hold, Naruto. Zabuza said as he sat in a meditative pose, eyes closed as he spoke. It is the mind strength that lets a ninja continue to fight long after a normal person would have given up. If your mind's will is strong, your senses can never be fooled, you can overcome any obstacle, and your will can never be broken. Do you understand, Naruto? Hi, Zabuza-sensei, I understand, Naruto said as he closed his eyes and relaxed his body. Try to find your mind center, reach out into your mind and give yourself to the calm, Zabuza said as Naruto and Haku did as they were told. Naruto listened to Zabuza's word as he calmed his mind, relaxing into the silence. Soon Zabuza's words started getting fainter and fainter until he couldn't hear them anymore. Opening his eyes, Naruto found he wasn't under the tree anymore. He was what looked like a labyrinth, a dimly lit maze of stairs that went in all directions even on the ceiling. And as many stairs as there were just as many doors, a countless number of them filled the walls, each identical to the last, giving no hint to what lay inside. Well, this is new, Naruto said to himself as he got up off the floor and looked around. Zabuza-sensei always said I was the most complicated and confusing person he had ever met. Guess that goes for my mind too. Naruto heard footsteps behind him, and after turning around Naruto came face to face with the strangest thing he had seen in his life himself. Well, to say himself would be somewhat the right idea, as it was clearly another Naruto standing across from him. He had the same body, the same whisker marks on his face, and the same smile he had on his face when he was truly happy, but that's where the similarities ended. The other Naruto had deep green colored hair and eyes. His outfit was a deep hunter green monk's robe decorated with a leaf and tree design that reminded Naruto of the forests back in his village. Tied at his waist was a whip that, from what Naruto could see, leaves were growing from. Okay, who in the hell is this guy? He looks like me, but I'm getting a weird vibe from him. Hi, master. I was wondering when you were going to visit us. I can't believe you're finally here, said the other Naruto with a goofy smile. Who are you? Naruto demanded, getting in a loose fighting stance. Whoever you are, you're not me, and what the hell are you calling me master for? The other Naruto just kept on smiling. You're right master, I'm not you, my name is Kusaki, and as to why I call you master, what else am I going to call the one who commands my power? Naruto gave him a confused look, relaxing out of his stance. What power? What do you mean your power? Kusaki simply smiled and shook his head. Don't you remember master? You used it just the other day when you ran into those bandits. Naruto thought about this. It was true, he had run into some bandits on their way back to camp after earning some money as a temporary guard at a noble's house. Zabuza had felt it was a job he could complete himself, seeing as it was a 3-day assignment needing only one person to fill in. When the bandits had tried to take his money, Naruto had used his bloodline to tie them up in vines in the trees around him. That's when it hit Naruto. You're my bloodline. Or at least part of it, am I right? The other Naruto's smile widened. That's right master. My proper title is Kusaki of the Plants. Then Kusaki seemed to think of something. Oh right. I need to introduce you to the others master. Please follow me. Kusaki turned on his heel and started walking the way he came, with Naruto close behind. Others? Naruto asked as he caught up with Kusaki, only to stop as he opened one of the many doors. Once inside, Naruto found it was the largest room he had ever seen. The room was not lit any better than the previous one, creating an eerie, ominous feeling. There was no ceiling visible, only an empty black void above, but Naruto's attention was focused elsewhere. In front of Naruto was a cage. The largest cage that Naruto had seen in his life, and the only thing holding it shut was a tiny slip of paper with some sort of seal on it. Master Kusaki said, gaining Naruto's attention. The others are coming, he finished, pointing up. Naruto looked where Kusaki was pointing to see 6 doors floating in the air. However, unlike all the other doors he had seen so far, each of these was distinct and different from the last. One was a red color and had flame designs etched onto the surface. When Naruto looked closer, he could see that at times fire would flare from the door. He looked to the one to the right and saw it had a wave design on the front. Water was dripping from under the dark blue colored door and was gathering into a puddle on the floor below. The next one was brown colored and had a carving of a mountain engraved onto it. It floated on a base of dirt that seemed to hold it up. Naruto's eyes shifted to the next one that had a lightning design on the front. The yellow door's handle seemed to constantly give off short bursts of electricity. The door right next to it was sky blue colored and the design of a cloud could clearly be seen. A few clouds could be seen hovering round it. The last door was a bright green color. Various mosses and small flowers were growing on the door and nearly covered the tree design that was carved into the door. That must be Kusaka's, Naruto thought to himself, looking at the last door. Suddenly, all the other doors blew open and 5 figures fell to the floor. Each looked like Naruto and each was unique. Master, let me introduce to the rest of your powers, Kusaki said happily as he happily pointed to one of the many Narutos. This is Kaji of the Flames. Kusaki pointed to the figure that had fallen from the red door. He had orange eyes and hair and one seriously pissed off expression on his face. He wore crimson red samurai armor. Tied to his side was a rather intimidating Nagamaki. That is Mashimizu of the Waves. The figure that had fallen from the dark blue door had deep sea colored hair and eyes. He was dressed in a fishnet shirt, swimming shorts and sandals. His face was one of cool collectiveness as he held a trident in his hands. This one's name is Daichi of the Earth. Kusaki pointed at the dirt brown hair colored figure. He wore a hard look to his face. He held a huge warhammer across his back. He was dressed in dirty shirt and long pants that covered the hiker boots on his feet. Next is Ryaiku of the Lightning. This one was by far the strangest yet. The color of his hair and eyes was that of a lighter shade of yellow than Naruto's. He seemed to always be twitching as he held a spear unsteadily in his arms. His apparel was a straitjacket that was untied and unbound, leaving the oversized sleeves to hang loose, and loose pants that seemed a few sizes too big. And last but not least there is Tei of the Air. The final form had sky blue hair and eyes with a serene smile on his face. He was dressed small open windbreaker and long jeans. The only thing he held was a folded up paper fan. Well, I guess anything can be used as a weapon, Naruto thought as the introductions were finished. So master, what brings you here anyways? Tei asked, interested. Before Naruto could respond, Kaji interrupted. Yeah. The fucking hell, master. Kaji said in a sneering tone. You think you can just drop in without a fucking explanation? Tei shook his head. Kaji, I know it's not in your nature, but can you please keep yourself quiet so master can't speak? Kaji glared at Tei with fury in his eyes. Listen, Cloud Boy, you keep talking to me like that and I'll gut you like a fucking fish. Tei just scratched his face and muttered, what a waste of energy. Tei jumped back just in time to avoid getting decapitated from Kaji's sword. Tei floated down from the jump and landed on one foot on top of one of Mashimizu's trident points. God damn it. Stop jumping around and fight me like a fucking man. Kaji yelled in frustration. Such language, Tei replied in false shock. Naruto watched as the two kept going at it, with Kaji chasing Tei all over the room, only for Tei to taunt him at every missed attack. They always act like this. He asked the others unfortunately yeah, Daichi said sighing as he rubbed his head with one hand. It seems that Tay can always rub Kaji the wrong way, and then we're the ones that have to put up with it. I don't know, I think it's kind of funny, Riku said in between bouts of crazed laughter. Once everyone had calmed down and Kaji had been restrained from chasing Tay anymore, Naruto had finally got to tell them how he had found himself in his mind. And that all there is to it, Naruto finished. He took a look around to see they each had held the same expression since he got there. Say why do you always have the same faces? Naruto asked. The figures looked at each other for a second. You see Master Mashimizu started, we represent your powers and emotions you feel. Each of us is specific to the given power so we can never change our looks. Naruto thought about this for a minute, but why can you each only control one power? Couldn't one of you do it all by yourself? Hell no. Kaji yelled, it's not possible for one of us to do all that. Naruto gave them a questioning eye, which Tay picked up. Master, you know about nature affinity, right? Naruto gave a short nod of the head. Yeah, that's what determines a ninja chakra type, and what kind of jutsu is easiest to learn based on its element. What about it? With most people, they have only one affinity that they are strong with. For example, your sensei's abusa is geared toward the water element. It is unusual for anyone to have more than one element that they can control and balance easily. Tay said, a normal body would never be able to handle as many elements as you can. We act as limiters for your power, master. If we were not here, your powers would go wild and your control would essentially be non-existent. Mashimizu continued, every little emotion you felt would cause your powers to flare up and you would likely not last 10 minutes in that state. We make sure your powers are held back till they are needed and are not harmful to you while you use them. Naruto thought this was as good an excuse as any, but he still had one question on his mind. Okay, I get that well enough, but can you explain why there's a giant cage in my head? Riku just started to snicker wildly. It is easier if you see for yourself, master, just don't get too close to the bars. Heh. Giving the crazy power a suspicious look, Naruto started to walk toward the cage. As he got closer to it, he felt an ominous feeling of dread pass over him. Suddenly a giant set of claws jutted from the cage, and if they had been 5 feet closer, Naruto would have lost his head. Naruto however just stood still as the claws receded back into the cage and a pair of demonic glowing eyes glared at him. What's wrong, child, scared you so much you can't move? Hahaha. Naruto shrugged and replied, not really, I'm pretty sure those guys would jump in if I was in any real danger. Naruto pointed over his shoulder at his doppelgangers. So, care to tell me why is it exactly that I have a giant woodland animal in my mind? The whole room shook as a growl emanated from the cage. Child, if this damnable seal wasn't keeping me in here, you would be the first thing I kill. Naruto however smirked, and yet you're stuck behind a cage with the doors kept shut by a piece of paper. Once again the giant fox growled, you should know your place, child, you're talking to the most powerful of all Biju, and the Lord of Hell. I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto stared at the giant fox. Hold it, I may not have always paid attention in history class, but even I know the Yondaime kicked your furry ass into the grave. How could you be here? The Kyuubi began to chuckle in an almost amused tone, you humans think so highly of yourselves even when face to face with something far beyond your comprehension. No human, no matter how powerful, could ever kill a being like me. So instead of fighting me, that damn human sealed me away. I would actually be impressed by his creativity if I weren't so pissed at what he did to me. Naruto was surprised at the fox's words. Well, that's certainly different than what we learned back in the village. Wait, he said he was sealed, and since he is in my mind that means Naruto's face turned to a frown. I'm the one you're sealed into, you're the reason I was hated and attacked in my village, aren't you? The Kyuubi just grinned and replied, for such a young human, you're certainly much more perceptive than one would think. Yes, your pathetic village seems to believe that you're me or close to that and thus attack you. Such sad little vermin trying to live some silly dream of revenge. The fox stopped talking when he heard Naruto start to snicker, then it turned into a full-blown laugh. What is it, child? Can't handle the shock that your precious village has been keeping this from you? Naruto shook his head as he calmed himself and said, no, I just think it's funny that they could mistake me for an oversized Rorogue like you. Once again the room shook, though this time it was caused by Kyuubi striking the cage with its 9 tails and roaring, making it feel like an earthquake. Compared to the last one, I swear, you little whelp, when I get out of this fucking cage and get my powers back, you're going to see why they called me a demon. Hold it, your power? You mean my bloodline is your power? Naruto said in a surprised tone, how can I use your powers if they belong to you? Kyuubi seemed particularly pissed as he explained, the seal separated my powers from me and they require a physical form to sustain them. For whatever reason they seem to have chosen you to command them. Kyuubi explained, then taking on a tone of contemplation, and being in you has even given them something close to physical bodies themselves. Then Kyuubi turned its attention back to Naruto. I will admit this, child, it's impressive you show no fear, but you're still as weak as a flea in terms of power. The Kyuubi's grin widened as Naruto's eye twitched at being compared to a flea. In fact, I bet you wouldn't last a second against the weakest of my kind. Naruto had been ignoring the fox however, as a thought passed through his head. I remember hearing that the fox had more power than anything the village had seen before, and that its chakra was so strong it destroyed parts of the forest with it alone. Even with the seal draining his powers into me, he must have a lot of chakra left in him, Naruto thought. Well then, you stupid fox, why don't you help me get stronger? Naruto yelled, I had to put up with my village's anger at you every day before I left, and you owe me big time for that. This of course made the fox give an intrigued angry look. So you're going to pay off that and give me as much of your chakra as I want, whenever I want. The fox's response was anything but one would expect after a human just demanded something from it. It started to laugh. Ha ha ha. You're something else, I'll give that little human. Very well, you amuse me, so I will lend you my chakra. Besides, if you die, I die, and I don't want to see that Shinigami again anytime soon. What do you know, even the mighty demon Kyuubi is afraid of something, Naruto teased. Don't push your luck, human, Kyuubi replied as it retreated back into the darkness of the cage. Naruto turned around, smiled. Then flashback, after he had woken up, he had told Zabuza and Haku what he had found in his mind. Both were surprised, but Zabuza had seen this as a unique opportunity. A child holding demon powers would be a strong tool indeed. Thus Naruto had experienced a whole level of training, all the while having the fox taunt him as he was doing now. But for Naruto, now was not the time to bother him. Listen fox, why don't you just get Kaji and Tate to fight again, instead of bothering me? Naruto asked in an annoyed tone. No, that's too easy, besides you're a much better distraction than those one emotion wonders in here, Kyuubi replied almost mockingly. Damn fox, Naruto muttered as he reached the last stair. Hearing movement in the wind, Naruto stared up at a tree in front of him. On a branch stood Zabuza, his sword in hand, a pleased look on his bandaged face. And on a branch below him sat Haku with her Mist Hunter Nin mask covering her face, but even then, Naruto could tell she was happy he was back. Naruto's thoughts drifted to the years past since he had begun his training. The last 2.5 years had been hell for Naruto, especially early on when he had dodging and avoidance training with Haku. It was closer to a dangerous combination of hide and seek put together with tag than actually training. The major differences between those games and his training was he wore a lot of weights as he tried to dodge Haku's Senbon attacks, let's just say she aimed low. The jutsu with Haku wasn't much better. She seemed to take great pleasure in beating Naruto senseless, seeing as how much weight he had limited how much he could move. On the plus side, Naruto's body slowly began to learn to act on instinct and reflex, and he did actually learn the basics of fighting, despite the injuries incurred. Naruto was grateful Zabuza had decided to have Haku teach him some basic medical jutsu so he could take care of himself and not have to keep going back to him after each lesson. Things really didn't improve when Haku found Naruto reading his little orange book one night. That was a problem in itself. Naruto learned an important fact about women that day: don't give them more of a reason to be pissed at you. After that, Haku seemed even more hell-bent on making Naruto's training the most hazardous thing to a male. Not a month after that incident, however, Naruto finally proved to Haku that he was not anything like she thought he was. They had stopped at a town famous for its hot springs and high-class hotels after collecting a particularly good bounty a day before. After Haku had threatened Naruto with pain beyond belief if he peeked, she went to enjoy a hot bath. Naruto was not the least bit interested in a bath at the moment, so he decided to walk round town till Zabuza came to get him. However, at that moment he heard giggling coming from the well outside the women's spring. When Naruto went to investigate, he saw a man peeking through a hole in the wall. Now Naruto married Icha Paradise, but he knew to treat women with respect. Naruto gave the man no rest in the beating that followed, all the while screaming words like pervert and lech. After Naruto finished by throwing the man into the street, it became apparent that the women in the baths had heard his shouts of rage, as they were now fully dressed and holding various objects in their hands to inflict bodily pain upon the peeping Tom. Needless to say, Haku thanked Naruto for helping them dispense their deserved justice upon the poor bastard. After that, training with Haku was much safer, and she even, although grudgingly, put up with his choice of reading material. True to what Zabuza had predicted, they became close friends. Haku even started calling him by Naruto-kun, which for a reason beyond Naruto's comprehension, made Zabuza smile. They had become even closer friends as they found their lives were quite alike. Despite Naruto never having known his parents, he related to Haku's pain of not knowing why people hated them and discovering why. Thanks to this, their friendship grew quickly, once Haku had given him the chance, of course. Zabuza had been much easier to deal with compared with Haku in the long run. He was, however, a slave driver when it came to training and expected results. If Naruto did something wrong even once, Zabuza had him staying up all night working on it with no dinner, only to have a double workload the next day. True to his words, Naruto never saw his sword again for a good 6 months. Instead, Zabuza gave him the most insane workout schedule known in the shinobi world. From dodging water jutsus while studying a scroll to being attacked in the mornings while he slept, almost getting impaled by Zabuza and his giant sword. Zabuza had him doing it all, and there were times when Naruto did question if he would be able to survive. Of course Zabuza was there to properly motivate him if need be, namely insinuating that someone so short and weak could never become Hokage. This, of course, pushed Naruto just to prove Zabuza wrong. Zabuza used Naruto's anger like a well-made blade, always pushing him past his physical and mental limits to further his training. It was thanks to this training style that Naruto was actually able to make regular Bushin clones. Haku helped Naruto learn to slowly and carefully release just enough chakra to create them successfully. Though he doubted he would ever actually use them since he knew the much stronger versions, Naruto felt pride in being able to accomplish something hard for him, but easy for everyone else. Finally, after the 6 months had passed, Zabuza allowed Naruto to begin learning the way of the sword. Despite being a master of the silent killing style, Zabuza had practiced a few other styles in case he needed them. Zabuza decided that the best style to teach Naruto was the Zensoku Ryu sword technique. It was a mixed offensive-defensive sword style, relying heavily on the speed and creativity of the one using it. Of course Naruto had creativity in spades, and thanks to all the weight Zabuza had unloaded on him, his speed wasn't a problem. In addition to his training with Haku and Zabuza, Naruto had learned quite a bit from what he had taken from the village. He had breezed through academy learning material, seeing as Zabuza had to teach him those basics anyway, and managed to learn a few ninjutsu and taijutsu techniques from the scrolls he took, and Zabuza taught him a few from his personal collection. Naruto had become curious as to why Zabuza would teach him so much, and when he asked, Zabuza merely replied, "My tools need to be stronger than anyone else's, that include those I lead, I make you stronger, you serve me better." Naruto chuckled a little at the thought. That was how Zabuza rationalized everything. "Boy, Naruto, did you finish the job?" Zabuza asked as Haku and him jumped from the tree to in front of him. "No, Zabuza-sensei, I just spent the last few hours making a bonfire that can be seen all the way in Suna, what do you think?" Naruto half deadpanned, half retorted as he tossed a head his hand to Zabuza, who caught it in midair. Zabuza ignored the remark and stared at the head in his hand for a minute. "Very good, Naruto, clean cut through the neck." "Good work as usual," Naruto humphed as if insulted before replying, "I better be after all the training you put me through." Zabuza shook his head in an amused manner. "Fine, let's just get this head back to the village, they're waiting for us." The three began the trek back to the village, Zabuza in front and Haku and Naruto side by side behind him. In a quiet voice Naruto whispered, "Hey Haku-chan." "Yes, Naruto-kun." She whispered back. 10-1 says they welcome us back with a party, and Zabuza-sensei gets wasted like usual, he finished with a masked smirk, causing Haku to giggle quietly. "See, what did I say?" Naruto laughed as Haku and himself watched the festivities from one of the many tables set outside. The entire village square had been turned into a party area, complete with music and food, to celebrate the death of the murder that had plagued their village for a month's time. It seemed the whole village had turned out to welcome them back and had gone all out to thank them. What was so amusing to Naruto and Haku was at the moment Zabuza had 3 large jugs of sake in his hands and though clearly intoxicated, was dancing surprisingly well with 3 ladies of the village at the same time. "You know, it seems that whenever he gets like this Zabuza-sensei can win over any women he wants," Naruto said as he grabbed a bowl of rice and fried steak from in front of him. "I wonder what they see in him," Naruto joked slightly as he grabbed the rim of his mask with his index finger and pulled it down to round his neck to enjoy his food. Naruto was oblivious to the stares he got from many girls his age as he removed his mask and ate his food. Not once since the trio had taken the job had Naruto removed his mask in public view of the female village population. Now that he had the girls sitting at the table could plainly see his face, and they were impressed. The girls at the table slowly started to inch closer. But one look from Haku sent them right back to their seats. As she scooted closer to Naruto she gave a glare that would have frozen hell over in seconds to any other girl that came close. "Nah, Haku-chan, what's wrong?" Naruto asked as she was now practically rubbing shoulders with him. "Oh, nothing, Naruto-kun," she replied sweetly. Naruto stared at her for a minute with a raised eyebrow, then shrugging his shoulders he went back to his meal. "I wonder why Haku-chan is acting so strange, eh? Whatever it is doesn't concern me," Naruto thought as he chewed the food in his mouth. Naruto turned his attention back to Zabuza, who had apparently passed out at one of the tables nearby, a sake jug held tightly in his hands. Sighing to himself Naruto finished his food and set the empty cup down. "Haku-chan, looks like Zabuza-sensei finally had enough to drink, let's get him in bed, then we can finish enjoying the party." Haku nodded in agreement and got up to help Naruto carry Zabuza into a nearby hotel they were staying at for the night. Lifting him up, it took both of them on opposite sides to carry the heavily intoxicated man. "Kami, Zabuza-sensei seems to gain like 20 pounds when he drinks this much, eh Haku-chan?" Now Naruto-kun, you know it's not nice to make fun of Zabuza-sama when he's like this, Haku replied as they dragged Zabuza from the party into his room. That doesn't make it any less true, Naruto countered as they tossed him onto his bed. There, now he can sleep off those last few drinks. Meanwhile, I want another bowl of rice, Naruto said as Haku pulled the covers of the bed over Zabuza, the jug still grasped firmly in his hand. Quietly they slipped out of the room and returned to the festival, enjoying it long into the night. Ugh, Okami, my head feels like I just went 10 rounds with Kisame without my sword. What happened? Zabuza said as he woke up. You drank enough alcohol to put a whale under, Zabuza-sensei. And it's about damn time you woke up too, it's almost past noon. Zabuza turned his head and saw Naruto sitting on the edge of the window smiling, his mask round his neck and a half-eaten apple in his hands. You were taking so long to get up. Haku-chan decided to go stock up on medicine at the market while I played wake-up call for you. Naruto grinned, taking a bite out of the apple. Zabuza moaned in pain. Naruto, it's too early to tease me about this. Naruto raised an eyebrow, got up and started walking to the door. What part of almost noon don't you understand? Naruto said, opening the door. Now get up, we got to leave before that woman who came in here when we left and spent the night with you comes back with the news you're out of San. Zabuza bolted upright, wide-eyed. What? Naruto poked his head in from outside the room and laughed. I'm joking, sensei. Naruto shut the door just in time to avoid getting hit by a vase that had previously been sitting on a table by Zabuza's bed. Damn brat will be the death of me, Zabuza muttered to himself as he heard Naruto's laughter disappear in the hallway. Pulling himself from the bed, Zabuza slowly walked over to the window Naruto had just seconds ago had been sitting on. He stared out to the village below as the bright sun lit up the blue sky above. Zabuza stared at a group of children as they ambushed Naruto as he came out of the hotel. Of course Naruto had knew they were there, Zabuza had trained him too well to not know, but he had let them jump as he seemed to have become the local hero and idol for the children and didn't mind the attention of the youngsters one bit. Zabuza snickered a little as Naruto was being pulled by both his hands by the children who wanted to play games with him and hear the story of how he had saved them for the 6th time that morning. Naruto, Zabuza thought to himself as he watched Naruto entertain the children with the story once more across the street, even letting them see his unsheathed blade in all its glory. You have grown truly strong for me, your dedication has been unquestionable, your loyalty unbreakable. Zabuza watched in amusement as Naruto was tackled by the children into the street, and as the children climbed all over him, Zabuza saw out of the corner of his eye Haku walk up to them, laughing all the while at Naruto's predicament as she carried a grocery bag in her hands. Zabuza's head filled with thoughts of all they had been through, from their missions together to the time in between. He thought of how Naruto had caught his first bounty alone and dragged the target all the way to the client by the hair because he had commented on his height, to how Haku had grown closer to him as time went on. Zabuza shook his head at this, despite how much he had trained Haku to be a killer and a tool, she was still a girl at heart and obviously cared for Naruto more than just a comrade or friend, not that she would admit it or Naruto knew. You are so dedicated in everything you do, I'm amazed I found such a good tool. No, I am amazed I found such a good student, Zabuza corrected himself with a smile. Then the smile fled his face as an unreadable expression entered, and as he turned away from the window and faced the darkness of the room, he whispered quietly into the shadows, yes, I believe it is time. Zabuza-sensei, what is our next mission? Naruto asked after they left the village as the sun began to set, lighting the sky up in bright red hues and pink clouds. Haku and myself will be traveling to a nearby village to find a new bounty to take, Zabuza replied as they reached a fork in the road. And me? Naruto asked, seeing as it was not the first time they had separate missions. Zabuza turned to face Naruto. That is for you to decide, Naruto, this is where we go our separate ways. Silence hung in the air, the only sound coming from the leaves in the wind. Despite that his mask was on, Zabuza could tell Naruto was in shock, and not just him. Haku's eyes were wide open, Zabuza hadn't told her of this since his decision only hours earlier, and the news was hard-hitting, she was going to lose her only friend who shared so much in common with her. Zabuza-sensei, you're joking, right? Naruto asked quietly, hoping it wasn't true. Zabuza only shook his head in response. Naruto, you have learned so much since we met, you have exceeded my expectations of you time and again. Zabuza replied, but now you must walk your own path and follow where it leads you. But Zabuza-sensei, what about my promise? Naruto asked. Naruto, your promise was that you would help me reach my goals as long as I had anything to teach you, and you have kept your promise. I have nothing to teach you in that Kenjutsu style, all that you need to do is practice what I have taught you, Zabuza said with a smile. Remember, I expect you to have improved with your sword skills if and when we run into each other again, or I'll run you into the ground with the basics 10 times over. It'd be a fucking waste if you slacked off in your Kenjutsu and Batenjutsu lessons that I taught you, Zabuza said as he shifted his sword's weight. Even with his bandaged face, Naruto Haku could see him smiling proudly at him before he turned to face the path leading to the right. Haku, Zabuza said, gaining her attention, catch up with me when you're done saying goodbye, and with that he started to walk away. He knew she needed to do this herself, otherwise it was going to catch up with her later and then she would feel 100 times worse than before. Naruto and Haku watched as Zabuza walked away. Well, Naruto said as he turned his head toward Haku, this really sucks, huh? Haku allowed a small giggle before a sad smile took over her face. Naruto knew what she was going through, but he also knew she was most likely taking it much harder than he was. He tried to think of something that would cheer her up even a little, and then he got an idea. Hey Haku-chan, you know what the Hokage of my village once told me about friends? Naruto asked. No, what did he say, Naruto-kun? Haku asked half-heartedly, still depressed from the news. Naruto put a hand on her shoulder. He once told me that even if friends are miles apart for years, their hearts are side by side forever. Naruto finished with a very Kakashi-like smile. Haku gave a slightly happier smile in return. Yeah, you're right, it sounds like your Hokage is a really nice and know what he's talking about, Naruto-kun. Naruto laughed a little. Well, he's like a grandfather to me and he's had a lot of experience in these things. Naruto-kun, you're my only friend besides Zabuza-sama. It's not that you're leaving that I'm upset about, I knew that would happen eventually. It's that it's happening so suddenly that is getting to me. Haku said as she kicked a rock. Just remember Haku-chan, I'm your friend and nothing is going to change that, Naruto replied, making Haku giggle a little more as she pulled something out of one of her ninja packs. That's just like you, Naruto-kun, always thinking positive. Here, this is for you, Haku said as she handed him a very familiar looking orange book. Taking a closer look at it, Naruto found it to be the second book in the series known as Icha Icha Paradise. Naruto raised an eyebrow and chuckled a little. Why Haku-chan, I never knew, calling me a pervert when you had this all along. Naruto suddenly had a close experience with the ground thanks to a now red-faced Haku hitting him in the head. Baka. Haku shouted, it's not mine. Zabuza-sama and I bought it for your birthday. Pulling his face from the ground, Naruto asked, my birthday? Naruto thought to himself before laughing as he pulled himself up from the ground, oh yeah, I forgot my birthday is today. I've been so caught up in training that it slipped my mind. Haku shook her head with a smile. It was supposed to be your birthday gift, but now I guess it's your going away gift instead. Yeah, I guess it is, Naruto replied as he stared at the book's cover. Just remember one thing, Naruto-kun, Haku said as she turned around and faced the road. What's that, Haku-chan? Naruto asked, turning her head over her shoulder with a smile. If you forget about us, I'll make sure you regret it. With that said, Haku ran off down the road after Zabuza. Naruto watched as Haku caught up to Zabuza and stayed in place until they disappeared into a forest in the horizon. Well, Naruto said to himself, opening his new book, happy birthday to me, and with that he started walking the opposing path toward whatever adventures waited his arrival. Man, I needed this. Naruto exclaimed, tossing a dumpling into his mouth. 6 months after separating from Haku and Zabuza, he had made his way out of the land of waves by boat after several successful bounty hunts and missions he had completed. Naruto had avoided the land of lightning and stone, seeing as he thought they wouldn't be too accommodating to a traveler like him, so instead he had taken a boat to the land of waterfall. After spending a few months there, he made his way through the land of grass, briefly stopping to get cash and local jutsu as best he could before making his way through the land of rain, which he followed all the way to the ocean. The trip had put him in a small shore town on the coast of Suna. His first stop after getting off the boat was to find a place to eat. He quickly found the best restaurant in the town and was enjoying some of the local flavors. Hey. Another order of the yakiniku and miso soup over here. And keep the tea and dumplings coming. Naruto shouted to the cook, who nodded and yelled, coming right up, quickly making the food for the soon-to-be 10-year-old boy with a large wallet. Naruto smiled and let his mind wander as he waited, his hand holding a trinket round his neck he bought in the land of grass, a whistle in the shape of a leaf. Naruto bought it out of curiosity at first, but soon found he liked the soft quiet music he could make with it. His thoughts were interrupted as the chef yelled, order up. Naruto smirked a little as his food was delivered to him. The service here is great, Naruto thought, before an unreadable expression came to his face. Too bad my village can't be more accommodating. Not one to let bad thoughts get in the way of a good time. Naruto started eating his meal. Halfway through, however, you bastards. Naruto looked up from his food and sighed as he put his chopsticks down, pulling his mask up over his nose. I'll be right back, just got to take care of something, Naruto said to the waiter as he picked his sword up from beside his chair. Walking outside, Naruto worked his way to the front of the gathering crowd as an old man shouted at a group of 5 thugs Naruto knew were a dime a dozen. He heard whispers among the crowd behind him about the thugs. Those guys work for Yoku Okogi, that rich land baron who's been buying up land left and right. One man whispered, I hear people who don't give him their land have a habit of disappearing, even the police are afraid to do anything against him. Another whispered back, how many times do I have to tell that rat-faced boss of yours till he gets it into his scrawny little head, my land is not for sale. All the thugs did in return was start to laugh like crazy. Listen, you old shit, I don't think you understand the situation, one of the thugs said. What the boss wants the boss gets, and those that get in his way, the thug said as he reached into his shirt, suddenly throwing a knife die. Naruto jumped in front of the old man and swung his sheathed sword upwards, knocking the knife into the air until it fell in front of the thugs, embedding itself in the ground. "Well now, that doesn't sound very friendly," Naruto said, turning his head to the hired goons. "I may not know what's going on, but I'm not going to let you kill an old man in broad daylight and get away with it, you little punk." One of the thugs shouted, "This is none of your business." Naruto ignored the little comment and gave them a lazy look. "You're out here picking a fight with an old man and disturbed my lunch. I think it's my business now." Naruto looked over his shoulder to the old man. "Hey, old man, how about I do you a favor and get rid of these guys for you?" The old man looked at Naruto. "Kid, if you do that I'll pay for that meal they interrupted." Naruto smiled under his mask. "Really? Well, this day is getting better and better. I get some exercise and a free meal." Naruto turned his attention back to the thugs in front of him, "though I don't think these oxen will be much of a challenge. By the way they look, it won't take too long." Naruto closed his eyes in thought, missing the irritated looks on the faces of his opponents, raising one finger at a time on his right hand as if counting, and after a few seconds opened his eyes as he came to a decision. "I'd say 3 minutes is about the most they'll last against me." "You brat." The men shouted as they charged Naruto, who only stood his ground. "Aw, looks like I offended them," Naruto said to himself in a light tone as the two largest hired goons in front of him were about to hit him. Naruto jumped back as their fists neared him, then grabbing their arms tightly in his hand. Naruto smirked as he gave them a shock thanks to his bloodline, making the two brutes yell out in surprise till he let go and they dropped to the ground, some smoke coming from their cloths. Everyone, the 3 remaining thugs included, stared in shock as a child brought down 2 full-grown men with ease. "Well, that was less than I expected," Naruto said as he stepped over the 2 incapacitated thugs as they unconsciously twitched on the ground. "I hope you 3 will be more of a challenge." Naruto raised his hand with a masked smile to show the blue and white sparks that danced along his gloved arm and fingers. "I would hate to look like a bully." 2 of the remaining hired goons were having second thoughts about fighting the child in front of them. One, however, didn't seem to notice the danger as he reached under his shirt. "Why you?" But he froze as he felt something against his back. "This is good as a brawl. No one has been hurt too badly yet. But if you are going to pull a concealed blade, then I will stop holding back." The 2 thugs next to him jumped back when they realized there was another kid like the one in front of them. The hilt of his blade jabbed in back of the overconfident brute. "Pick up your friends and go home." Naruto watched as the 3 goons dragged their fallen comrades away and the shadow clone disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Naruto sighed and muttered quietly to himself, 1 minute and 25 seconds, what a boring fight. "Then why did you waste your time with those overgrown apes in the first place?" the Kyuubi asked in a voice of intrigued boredom. "Because I saw an opportunity," Naruto replied as he turned back to the old man with a smile. "Mission accomplished." "Seriously, old man, this is fine. I mean, those goons weren't worth a whole meal anyway," Naruto said as he devoured his 16th plate of dumplings. Naruto returned to the restaurant shortly after sending off the unwelcome interruption, and the old man, true to his word, had followed him to pay the bill only for Naruto to try to convince him that he didn't need to. The old man, however, was proving to be as stubborn as Naruto was, so they compromised that he would only pay for half of it. Of course, that didn't stop the old man from offering to pay for it all throughout the meal. "Well, I just want to make sure I show my appreciation for what you did for me back there. That damn Akogi has got everyone so scared they won't help anyone else but themselves." The old man smiled as he watched Naruto. "So Naruto was it? You're really not from around here, are you?" Naruto shook his head and smiled as he chewed. "Like I said before, I'm traveling and wanted to have lunch before leaving town." "Lunch?" the old man thought as the dishes on the table in front of him slowly grew higher. "I haven't seen parties serve this much food." While he was distracted, Naruto began to try to get a better picture of the old man next to him. "Let's see, he's wearing cloths and glasses meant for work outside, and his hands are covered in dirt and dust. He was willing to pay for my meal, meaning he has a job or some other source of income to support himself. He walks well considering his age, so he must exercise to keep in shape." "Hey, old man, you work on that land you own?" Naruto said, making the man look at Naruto as if he had grown a second head. "How did you know that?" Naruto smirked a little and replied, "In my occupation it pays to be observant. It also pays to know how to fight like I did earlier." Naruto noticed a glint in the old man's eye. "Well then, how would you like to make some money before you leave?" Naruto raised an eye at this. "I want to hire you as a bodyguard for me and my land for a few days till I'm sure that bastard Yoku can't try anything. I don't really need to. But I can make up what my meal cost and maybe a little extra for later." Naruto thought to himself. "Besides, I want to see what made those guys determined enough to get his land that they would kill him openly in public like that. I'd like to know the name of the person I'm working for," Naruto said as he chewed his remaining dumpling. Smiling in return, the old man simply replied, "My name is Naoju Takunauka." "Hey Takunauka-san, we've been walking through this kami-forsaken desert for 2 hours, where the hell is your place?" Naruto said in an annoyed tone as he followed the old man through the endless sand and dirt while carrying all of his stuff. At first Naruto was glad to accept the old man's offer as a temporary bodyguard and to make sure an incident like before didn't happen again. They had worked it out to be classed as a flexible B rank mission, which could be upgraded to an A rank, as the likelihood of combat was relatively high, and Naoju didn't know if Akogi had hired anyone stronger than his opponents earlier. But as time dragged on and they traveled further into the desert, Naruto began to believe either the old man was lost or was suffering from the heat of the desert air. "Relax," Naoju said as he kept walking forward. "My land is right over the next hill." Sure enough, as soon as they walked over the next hill, there in the middle of nowhere was what looked like a farm surrounded by trees and grass. If Naruto didn't know better, he would have thought it was a mirage. A forest in the middle of the desert isn't something you see every day. Even at this distance, Naruto could see there were crops growing in fields and a small pond nearby. By all accounts, it was a haven from the land around it, an oasis in the heart of the desert. As they got closer, Naruto could see why the men earlier had tried so hard to force the old man to give it up. It was so green and full of life that it reminded him of the forests back in his village. In the center of the land was a two-story house built beside the lake and a large crop field. On the other side was one of the largest trees Naruto had seen in a long time. Grass grew from the ground in abundance on the property. "Wow," Naruto said in a quiet voice, barely able to express his amazement, to which Naoju chuckled. "Yes, it is amazing, isn't it?" Naruto looked around at the trees before he walked up to one of the trees and put his hand against it. He could feel a sense of calm and warmth from the land, and unknowingly a masked smile overtook his face. "Hey old man, this is incredible. It's so calm and serene here. I can tell you take great care of this place." Naoju adjusted his glasses a little out of embarrassment of the compliment. "Well, now you know why Akogi is so determined to get my land from me. My land's value has skyrocketed over the years, and so has how much I own." Naoju looked over his land with a smile. "It's grown to about a little over 300 meters, so like it or not, that's what I got." Naruto stared at Takenaka as he seemed lost in memories. "You'd never guess this place grew out of the desert." "What do you mean?" Naruto asked, genuinely interested as Naoju started walking toward the house in the center of the life-filled land. Naoju looked over his shoulder as he walked. "Well, about 40 years ago, after I retired from my last job, I passed through this stretch of land, and at first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me." Naoju walked over to the tree next to the house, which easily overshadowed the house in height. If he had to guess, Naruto would put the tree at 3 to 4 stories over the roof of the house. Back then this tree was nothing but a tiny sprout, making it grow this large and watching as the land grew as I breathed and nurtured this green place out of the sand and dust. Nothing compares to describe how far I have come. You've really put your heart and soul into this place, haven't you?" Naruto asked, to which Naoju nodded in return. "I had to give up a lot of important things to get this land the way it is. To come this far from nothing, there's no way I can just leave it behind. After all, this land is my life and my dream, so please protect it as best you can." Naruto pointed to the house. "Well, why don't we discuss this over some tea? I need to know some more about this Yoku Akogi." Naoju nodded and Naruto followed into his house. "Okay, now tell me everything, start at the beginning and leave nothing out. If you do, it could endanger you and myself later," Naruto said in a serious tone, making sure the old man understood the situation. Nodding his head as he finished pouring the drinks and set the pitcher down on the table between them, Naoju took a sip of his drink before he began to explain the situation. "That bastard Akogi has been after my land for some time. Him and his goons are always coming around with insane offers and petty threats, trying to force me to sign it over to him. He's tried every dirty tactic in the book, from trying to get my land foreclosed so it will be sold off to having his hired hands come here and wreck my farm tools so I can't do my job." Naoju smiled at this, "But no matter what he's done to try to ruin me, I always manage to pull through." Naruto chuckled a little. "So besides its value, what would you want with your land?" Naruto asked as he looked out the window beside him to the lake. Naoju scowled a little. "Akogi is like a child who wants a priceless new toy to play with till he breaks it. Once he has it, he will either forget it." "A lot of locals were talking about it earlier. If anything." Naoju scowled even more. "Besides me, a lot of locals were approached to sell their land to Akogi. A few accepted and sold to him, but when their payment came, it was reduced to enough coins you could hold it in one hand." Naoju snorted. "Turns out, he scammed them with big words and tight pockets. When he said planned payments, he meant pay you a coin a month." Then anger overtook his face. "And then there were those like me who refused to sell this land of ours that we worked so hard to get. We couldn't give it to anyone, especially to him, after we heard what he had done to the others. Then he started harassing us and hiring the extra muscle, and after that didn't work." Naoju trailed off as he looked into his cup. "Some of us started to disappear." Naruto watched the old man carefully, taking in every detail he spoke. "At first, I couldn't think of a reason why, but I knew something was going on in the shadows of this desert, and it somehow involved Akogi. It couldn't be a coincidence that my friends and neighbors were gone in the night and the next day Akogi bought the land cheap. I decided to look around the last land Akogi bought before he got there to level the house. When I got inside, I found nothing." Naruto gave him a questionable look. "I mean, I found nothing." There was no indication they had been ready to leave. Their clothes were still in house, they left the family items behind, hell, they had dinner still laid out on the table. And then I found this. Naoju reached into his pocket and pulled out a small gold watch on a chain. He placed it in front of Naruto, noticed it seemed to be broken, as if crushed, and picked it up and opened it. Inside the lid the watch was broken. The glass covering the hands and gears was cracked, some sand from the desert had gotten into the gears, and Naruto could see dried blood on the inside of the lid, covering a picture of a man and a woman who he assumed were the previous owners. Damn it. Naoju shouted as he banged his hand on the table. I knew that bastard was behind it. He was picking us off one by one somehow, and now I'm the last one, so that's what happened, Naruto thought darkly. Akogi got tired of them refusing his offers and decided to handle it his way. Naoju suddenly became very quiet. I know I'm asking a lot of you, but please protect my land. It's all I have left in this world to remember those who are gone now. Old man, Naruto said, gaining his attention. I promise we'll protect your land or die trying, and my Nindo won't let me break a promise I make. Naruto smiled. Now what can we do to pass the time, old man? Naoju laughed harder than he had in a long time. Hey old man, do you need any more of these seeds? Naruto asked as he carried a bag with both hands to Naoju as he finished plowing one of the unused fields near the lake. No, I think we have enough. Now all we need to do is cover the seeds we put down and water them, Naoju said as he wiped sweat from his face with a napkin. I'll take care of it, Naruto said, putting down the bag and walking over to the side of the field. Getting down on a knee, Naruto made a hand sign before putting his hand against the dirt. Naoju watched as the ground moved. Slowly it filled in the ditches, covering the seeds within. I've seen a lot in my life, but you keep surprising me. Naoju smiled as Naruto looked at the lake, then to Naoju, well, I guess I'll water them and help them grow while I'm at it. Naruto focused his chakra toward the lake with another hand sign, from which a pillar of water exploded and rained down on the field. Naruto looked over the soaked field before jamming the fingers on his right hand into the soft mud. Naoju stared in awe as the newly planted seeds started to sprout and grow. Well, how's that, old man? Naruto asked as he wiped his hands clean. I think you just completed my work for the next 3 months, Naoju joked as he stared at the full-grown crops, to which Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Well, now you have some time off, huh? Naoju smiled and nodded his head. Yeah, I guess after this is over I can take a vacation, Naoju said before a concerned look came to his face. But shouldn't someone be watching in case our unwelcome guest shows up? Naruto smiled. I got a few shadow clones watching the perimeter, so if anyone gets close they'll destroy themselves, so I'll know. Naoju shook his head in amusement as they started to walk back to the house. So since it is getting late, Naoju said looking at the sky, how about we get dinner started? How does a stew sound? Naruto was about to answer when suddenly he stopped moving as a shadow clone destroyed itself, sending Naruto its information and making him look towards the house. Looks like we have some company, Takenaka said Naruto in a serious tone. Naoju and Naruto walked out the front door to find the same 5 thugs from before standing behind a man Naruto had never seen before. Akogi, to what do I owe this blemish on an otherwise perfect day? Naoju said in a restrained voice, holding nothing but disdain. This is the rat-faced bastard that's been causing all these problems, Naruto thought to himself as he looked the guy over from behind Naoju. He wore what had to be the cheapest, expensive-looking suit and tie in the desert, and with his greased hair and 2 front teeth that overbit his lower lip, it didn't take much imagination to make him look like a rat. Yeah, I can see the resemblance, Naruto thought to himself. Brad, I can't believe I'm saying this, but that piece of vermin is even more pathetic than you, Kyuubi remarked, making Naruto smirk. I think we all know why I'm here, Takenaka. How much longer are you going to defy the inevitable? Yoku asked, a snide smile on his face. Until you get it into that scrawny little head of yours, my land is not for sale. Naoju all but yelled. Akogi's smile darkened. Well then, I'm afraid I will have to insist on my point. Snapping his fingers, the thugs started toward Takenaka until they saw Naruto walk from behind Naoju. Well, I'm afraid I must insist that you leave now, or I will be forced to remove you personally for trespassing on private property, Naruto said with a masked smile as he drew his blade, making the now nervous thugs back up a bit. Just what the hell are you imbeciles doing? Akogi asked as one of the thugs turned to him. Sorry boss, but remember when we told you about what happened earlier? Yoku stared at Naruto for a minute before turning to the goons with a frown. You're telling me you were beat by a child? Don't give me excuses when I'm the one who shells out your pay. Now give me the results I expect of you or I'll dump you in the deepest sand pit I can find. The goons turned hesitantly to Naruto. No, this would not turn out well. 5 minutes later, the butt of Naruto's sword connected with the chin of the last thug still standing, making the already beaten man fall on his back to unconsciousness. He joined his fellow brutes on the ground as they groaned in agony and pain from their ass being handed to them by the same kid for second time in one day. Naruto sheathed his sword and stared at Kogi. Now, like I said before, leave or else. Kogi stared at Naruto a moment before he began to chuckle to himself as he clapped his hands. Wonderful. An absolutely splendid performance. Naruto watched the man carefully, not wanting to be surprised by the unexpected. A child beating grown men in a fight while outnumbered is something special indeed. I simply must have you work for me. Akogi said in an almost happy voice. I can see now I have been wasting money on these fools. If you come work for me, then I'll give you what I was paying them. Akogi raised a hand in offering to Naruto. Quite generous, don't you think? All you have to do is say yes and I can draw up a contract. I'm afraid that would conflict with my contract with Takunaka-san, Naruto said, making Akogi laugh. What is this poor old fool paying you? I can double, no triple, whatever it is, just name it. After all, everyone has a price. Naruto shook his head. Not me. To me it's not how much the client can pay, it's who the client is. Naruto glared at Akogi, and I don't work for scum like you. Your money is wasted here, so I suggest you leave before I decide to stop playing nice. Akogi's mood completely flipped as a dark frown covered his face. Listen kid, I don't think you understand the situation. I will have this land, and if you stand in my way like this old fool of a farmer, then I won't spare you because you're a little brat. Suddenly a kunai flew past Akogi's cheek, leaving a shallow cut on his face. Then I suggest you choose who you hire wisely because next time I promise the crows will eat well if you don't, Naruto said, leaking a small amount of killer intent solely on Akogi as the cut on his cheek started to bleed. Despite losing his cool from the feelings of terror Naruto was giving him, Akogi paid little attention to Naruto's threat as he turned and started to walk away, covering his cheek with his hand. When those overpaid fools wake up, tell them to get back to my office for a conversation. Incompetence. When he was gone, Naruto shook his head a little as he put the sword back in its sheath. What a waste of my time. Naoju stared at Naruto for a moment. Say Naruto, I was wondering where a child like you gets a sword like that in the first place. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the question and looked down at his weapon. I got it just before I started traveling, I've had it ever since. Why? Naoju shook his head. Just wondering about something is all. Naruto shrugged and stared at the unconscious men on the ground. So what you want me to do with them? Naruto asked, still displeased of their employer's utter lack of concern for hired hands. Naoju stared at them for a moment. Drag them inside. I doubt they'll last long if they go back to Akogi anyway. He makes a habit of not letting weak links last too long. Naruto shrugged as he made a familiar hand seal and soon had 10 shadow clones dragging the men into the house. Well now, Naruto thought to himself as he watched the clones work, this will be an excellent chance to practice my interrogation skills. Naruto chuckled lightly to himself as he walked into the house. Naruto sighed as he walked out of the room he had moved the hired men into. He started wiping his hand on a towel as he joined Naoju in the kitchen. So why did you want to be alone with them when they woke up? Naoju asked as he looked up from his paper on the table. I needed to see if they had any information on what Akogi might do next, so I decided to interrogate them, Naruto said as he held up a kunai knife. What did you do to them? Naoju asked in a suspicious tone, to which Naruto smirked. Nothing. I made a threat that involved their important pats, and I showed them my knives, and they informed me of a few secrets quicker than I had expected. I never laid a finger on them. I'm actually kind of disappointed. Naoju chuckled a little. So they tell you anything good? Naruto nodded. A few things of interest came up. For one, it seemed that Akogi has been visiting a lot of ninja outposts in this area and that he has been meeting with many representatives of these outposts on a regular basis. Second, recently he shifted a sizable amount of money to a Suna account under several highly well-known representatives. From this I can conclude that Akogi is trying to hire the best shinobi he can find for an assassination mission, and you will be the target. Naoju stared at Naruto and sighed. So what you're saying is I should give him what he wants, right? To Naoju's surprise, Naruto shook his head. What I'm saying is that I need you to do exactly what I say, when I say it. I never back down from a job after I take it, so I'm changing this to an A rank mission like we agreed. Naruto walked to the front door. Where are you going? Naoju asked, to which Naruto replied as he walked out the door to plan a defense. Akogi was livid beyond any time before in his life after he returned to his manor. First, the hired muscle he had bought failed to get what he wanted, then they were beaten by a child who had bested them before, then said child had the nerve to insult him and attack him. But now standing in front of him was the answer to the thorn in his side. He had used them a lot recently, and he was sure that this new development would be no problem to deal with. He grinned, as soon all he had worked for would come full circle. I am trusting you to do as well as you have done in the past. I would hate for you to disappoint me after I continue to pay a very generous amount to your village for your services, Akogi said from behind his desk as he stared at the ninjas in front of him. Don't worry, I guarantee you this team can handle anything this child you described can do, a Jounin with most of his face covered in cloth said as he heard snickering behind him. This shrimp won't know what hit him. I even got some new parts for my toy. I can use. A boy in a black suite and had purple paint designs on his face grinned as he flexed his fingers. I can't wait to try them out. The blonde girl next to him scoffed and muttered to herself, this is a complete waste of our time and talent. It's bad enough we had to kill a bunch of old farmers. Now he can't even deal with children. She glanced over her remaining teammate outside the room who was leaning against the wall, a boy with red hair and a gourd on his back, and thought to herself, at least he doesn't need to be involved this time. Akogi turned his attention to the Joun and you will carry it out tomorrow night on the full moon. I hear it will be cloudy and dark enough that you won't be seen. Until then you are dismissed. The Jounin nodded, and as soon as they left the office he turned to his team. Temari and Kuro, you will be the ones to attack this mission. The two nodded. Hi, Baki-sensei. He looked at his remaining subordinate. There's no need for you to get involved, Gaara. I'm sure they can handle it alone. The redhead, who had been leaning against the wall, opened his eyes and walked past his team. It matters little, Gaara said in his whispered voice. Mother has been displeased with the blood I've given her as of late. I won't give her any weak farmer blood anymore. Temari and Kankuro sighed in relief. Even Baki let out the breath he had unknowingly been holding in, glad Gaara hadn't brought issue with his decision. When that happened it never turned out well for anyone. Gaara stopped walking as he reached the doors leading outside. But if I decide to give mother the blood of the boy who we will face and you get in the way, then I will kill you. With that said he walked out of the house, leaving behind three very unnerved Suna ninjas. Baki-sensei, are we just going to let him leave again? Temari asked as she watched her younger brother walk off. Baki sighed, you know how he gets when he's like this, he'll come back soon enough. I just feel sorry to whoever he meets first. Naoju watched in fascination as 10 Narutos were running through the house doing different things. 2 were counting a rather large assortment of ninja tools and gear on the kitchen table. Another was watching the television in the living room, watching the local news show about the weather the next few days. 3 were reading scrolls that listed some jutsus and a bingo book chapter of high-rank shinobi. 1 was bringing in a load of wood from the shed, another seemed to be meditating outside under a tree. The last 2 were looking through some maps and books detailing the local area and its surroundings. Hey, which one of you is the real one? Naoju asked, gaining the attention of the clone that was watching the TV. None of us are. Boss said he had to run to town and would be back before sundown. Naoju became stiff at this and started to panic. What? You mean he left? What if the ninjas he was talking about show up? The clone shook its head a little and turned its attention back to the TV. They won't attack till night, and if they're smart, not until tomorrow. The clone turned off the television. The weather says it'll be cloudy on the night of the full moon. Anyone less than a professional ninja won't be too much of a problem for us. Naoju sighed. He seems very relaxed about this. Doesn't it concern him that he could die? The clone looked back at Naoju. Boss would be stupid not to be concerned, but when a ninja takes a job they do their best to complete it no matter the cost. Ha, boss, more than most. Naoju shook his head and saw that the door where Naruto had held the thugs was open. Hey, where did those guys go? Naoju asked in a surprised, slightly worried voice. Boss decided to take them to town and hand them to the authorities there. Akogi may scare the police, but his bodyguards won't now that they don't work for him anymore. Naruto walked out of a store carrying a bag of supplies over his shoulder. He had bought them with the money he got for turning in Akogi's bodyguards. Well, now I think that's everything, Naruto said to himself as he started the trek back to the house, unaware he was being watched by a pair of green eyes as he walked down the street. Something doesn't feel right, Naruto thought to himself as he stopped walking. Almost like I understand now. Naruto turned down one of the alleys in the town, a street that stretched across 3 blocks of houses and shops, with plenty of room for him to defend himself in if necessary. As he reached the middle of the street he turned around. You can come out now, Naruto said lazily as he watched where he just came from. Shortly after he spoke those words the sand began to swirl on the ground. It formed up into a human shape before falling back to the ground to reveal a boy about his age, with his arms crossed and a gourd on his back. Well now, Naruto said with an amused tone, who might you be? The boy just continued to stare at Naruto. Not much of a talker, huh? Naruto asked, as the boy didn't move an inch. Okay, this guy is creepy, and I'm getting a weird vibe from him, too. Naruto heard deep laughter in his mind. Okay Kyuubi, what do you know about our friend here? He felt a demon smile in his mind. Sorry brat, I don't feel like sharing right now, but I'll tell you this, you two are 2 sides of the same coin, and with that he felt the fox recede back into the darkness of its prison. The same coin, huh? Naruto thought to himself, looking at his possible opponent. Well now, that's interesting. Naruto shifted a little under Gaara's gaze. Well now, is there something you wanted? Naruto's hand suddenly came to his face and he smiled under his mask as he held a shuriken mat of sand inches from his face. Now was that necessary? The shuriken collapsed to the ground in a heap of sand and dragged itself back to the boy. Your blood would make mother unhappy, the boy stated as he turned around and started walking away. It was hell, wasn't it? He asked Gaara. Gaara stiffened at the question. The loneliness was hard, always asking yourself what your purpose was, never knowing if you would see the next day or if anyone cared if you were alive, having to live alone in the shadows of the world so you wouldn't get hurt. You know nothing of what you speak, Gaara replied coldly as he stared over his shoulder, only to receive a masked smile from Naruto as he pulled his shirt up enough as he focused chakra to his stomach, revealing his seal. On the contrary, I know most of all. Thanks to my 9-tailed fox friend, we're the same, you and I. The Redeed's eyes widened in surprise for a quick moment before he merely grunted in response and turned back around. My name is Sabaku no Gaara. I hold the 1-tail Shukaku, he said. I am interested in your name. Naruto grinned a little. Naruto Uzumaki and fearful of the boy in front of him. Gaara figured even though the blonde in front of him had a stronger tailed beast, he would still win because of his sand. Gaara grunted again and started to walk away. Perhaps mother will like your blood after all. I look forward to fighting you, Naruto Uzumaki, and with that he disappeared in a swirl of sand. Well now, looks like this just got a whole lot more interesting, don't you agree, Kyuubi? Feeling the fox's laughter once again in his mind, Naruto started walking again towards his client's house. Temari was watching out the window of their team's room uneasily. She was anxious for her brother's return. Despite her fear of him, he should be back by now, she whispered as Kankuro looked up from the maintenance he was doing on Karasu. Temari, I know you're worried, but you know he'll come back soon as he's had enough. Hearing the door open, they saw as Gaara walked past the open door into his room. See, there he is, Kankuro said as Temari jumped up and walked after him. Sighing, Kankuro followed her. They stood outside the room occupied by their brother, and hesitantly Temari reached out for it, only for it to creak open, revealing Gaara in the corner of the dark room. Gaara, what happened when you went out? Temari asked as her brother remained still in the shadows with his eyes closed. I mean, did anyone cause you trouble? Gaara opened his eyes. I didn't kill anyone while I was out. This statement made both Temari and Kankuro step back in shock. Their brother never went out without killing someone while Baki or themselves weren't around, but I did meet someone interesting, the one protecting the target for tomorrow. Gaara suddenly smiled, making his siblings very worried. Gaara only smiled when something that excited him had happened. He's like me, he has a monster inside him as well. Kankuro nearly lost it when he heard that. Gaara was bad enough when fighting normal shinobi, he had no idea how far he might go when facing off another demon container. Gaara, please let us take care of it, you don't have to do anything, Temari pleaded with her brother, only to cringe as he glared at her. Mother wants his blood, Gaara stated as he walked from one corner to the window on the other side of the room. If you get in the way, I won't hesitate to kill you. The next day, Naoju walked out of his house. It was early in the morning, and just as Naruto had said, no one had attacked the property, but now said bodyguard was nowhere to be found in the house. It was then he heard the sound of strikes against wood. Following the sound, he found Naruto kicking and punching a large log that had been shoved halfway into the ground. All the while he was counting off his hits: 298, 299, 300. At that, Naruto stepped away from the log and sat down. So old man, you ready for tonight? Naruto asked as he picked up a bottle of water next to him and drank its contents slowly. About as ready as you are, kid, Naoju responded with a small smile, gracing his lips, making Naruto chuckle. Well then, we have nothing to worry about now, do we? Naruto asked as he stood up and his blade flew from under his cloak, cutting the log in half. I'm looking forward to this fight, just another step to my dream, Naruto said to himself as he looked up at the blue sky above. At night, Naruto was sitting on the porch of the house looking up at the cloud-filled night sky. His breath caused small fog clouds to rise from his mask. How can it go from hot to cold so quick? Naruto asked as he flicked a spark of flame on his fingers, keeping the cold at bay for the moment. That's the wonder of this place. Turning his head around, Naruto found Naoju standing at the door with a cup of hot tea in his hands. Thought you might enjoy this. Naruto smiled under his mask as he took the drink and removed his mask, drinking the hot liquid, quickly feeling it warming his body. Shouldn't you be somewhere safer? I mean, it's not much use protecting the land if the client dies while I'm defending it, Naruto asked as Naoju shook his head. No, I'm not leaving, even if I die I'll be happy knowing it was on my land and no one else's. Naruto chuckled a little. You're a strange one, old man. Look who's talking, Naoju muttered, making Naruto outright laugh, almost choking on what was left of his drink. Okay, I get it, Naruto said as a cool breeze flew over him, making him look up into the sky. Looks like the show's about to start. Get inside, Naoju-san. As Naoju shut the front door, Naruto looked out to the tree's limits as he felt the wind shifting. Looks like two of them. This should be interesting. Naruto pulled his mask back on as he continued to watch the tree line in front of him. He heard walking behind him and looking over his shoulder, he saw Naoju walking with a slight hobble towards him. Hey old man, didn't I tell you to get inside? Naoju nodded. Yeah, but I thought, what's the point if I'm attacked while I'm inside? Naoju asked, making Naruto laugh. Don't worry about that, Naruto said as he gave a sharp glance at Naoju, because you're not going to make it past the door. Suddenly Naoju lunged for Naruto, forcing Naruto to roll back in a dodge and kick Naoju in the side of the head, sending him off the porch and onto the dirt road in front of it. No use keeping this gimmick up now, show yourself, Naruto said as he readied his sword. Then Naoju slowly rose up like a zombie as his head twisted sideways to stare at Naruto, half his face gone to reveal a strange-looking wooden puppet beneath, its mouth wide open, as if in a mocking laugh. Well, now this is new, Naruto muttered as the rest of the puppet's disguise crumbled away. You're good discovering it was Karasu and not the old man. How did a runt like you know? A voice asked from all around Naruto, making him glance at the treetops. Damn it, he's hiding in the trees. I got to lure him out somehow, or fighting this puppet is going to be like trying to break a rock with a wet piece of wet grass. Naruto thought the old man may be ancient, but he doesn't have a limp in the leg. Guess Akogi left that out when he told you about him, huh? Naruto yelled, only to hear Naoju yell indignantly from inside the house. I'm not that old. The puppet jumped at Naruto again, only to have its arms blocked by Naruto's sword. "Is this the best you got?" Naruto asked as he pushed against the puppet. Naruto heard ripping and jump up just in time to avoid the two newly sprouted arms underneath the first pair that, if not avoided, would have impaled him on the kunai tied to the wrists. Naruto sent a high kick straight to the puppet's chin, hoping to try to crack a joint and disable it, only to see its head snap back into place and open its mouth wide shut. Naruto cursed as he saw a large knife in the mouth and twist his body just enough that the dagger missed a target. The knife slammed into the deck of the house and Naruto glanced at it briefly. "There's poison on the blade. Damn, the whole thing's probably rigged with that shit," Naruto thought as he dodged a punch from all four hands of the puppet. Naruto gained a footing against the marionette, only to suddenly get hit from the side by a strong blast of wind. "Damn, I was so preoccupied fighting that walking log pile, I forgot to look for jutsus from the other attacker." Naruto slammed to the ground and looked up to see the puppet with its arms raised and pointed to him, the fingers made into points sharp enough that would cut right through him. Naruto barely dodged them as the puppet's hands broke into the ground below it. "I got to get it on a one-on-one basis. That puppet's attacking me at close range and the other's giving long range support," Naruto thought as he jumped backwards to avoid another jutsu as the puppet charged him. "I wonder if this guy can take what he gives. Hey, what kind of shinobi fights with a doll?" Naruto yelled into the trees, having the desired effect as Kankuro's short temper ran out. "You runt. Now you're dead." The puppet was even faster now, the attacks wild and seemingly random as Naruto dodged each and everyone with ease. "Wow, that was better than I could have hoped. Now I just need to find him." Naruto watched the trees as the puppet moved. Then Naruto saw something out of the corner of his eye. A branch moved as if being bent by an invisible force. "There he is." "Kankuro, calm down. You're going to give away our position if you don't stop this now." Tamari hissed quietly as she watched her brother blindly attack the blonde, who was more trouble than they thought he would be. Not heeding her words, Kankuro used another one of his puppet's hidden weapons, one sure to get rid of the pest below. Naruto watched as the puppet shot a round object at him at an incredible speed. Taking a deep breath, Naruto used his bloodline and blew the object towards where his opponents lay hidden, forcing both of them out of the tree as it exploded in a cloud of paralyzing purple smoke. "A poison bomb. Sneaky and underhanded in a fight like this." Naruto smirked. "This guy is good. Damn it." Kankuro yelled as he landed. "That's for the run" comment. Naruto yelled as he pushed his foot sideways on the ground at the puppet master, making a pillar of rock jettison from the ground and almost hit Kanuro in the chest if Karasu hadn't absorbed the attack. "Wow, you're a weak one. I've had rocks that put up more of a fight than you do," Naruto mocked as he started to back away, slightly prompting Kankuro to follow. "I'll show you who can fight." Kankuro yelled as two more arms busted from the puppet's sides. Then Kankuro made Karasu charge at Naruto once again, making Naruto smirk under his mask. "Got him. Kankuro, look out." Tamari yelled. From her position she had been unable to attack the blonde without risking hitting her brother also. Unfortunately, her warning came too late as the puppet's foot lifted a concealed string and from underneath the dirt and leaves, a metal net with 4 kunais tied to each end shot up and caught not only the puppet but Kankuro as well, pushing them back and against a tree where the kunais embedded themselves into the tree, trapping both the puppet and its owner together. "You think this is going to stop me?" Kankuro yelled, making Naruto smile. "You're not going anywhere, makeup boy," Naruto teased as Kankuro grimaced. "As soon as I'm free, I'll what the hell?" Kankuro shouted. "I can't move my body." Naruto's laughter cut through the forest. "I added a bit of a poison of my own to the net. It won't kill you, but you're not going to be able to move for a couple hours and don't even think of using your puppet," Naruto said in a light tone. "This net is made of chakra-absorbing metal. Your chakra stings are useless while you're trapped in it," Naruto said as he started to walk away from Kankuro as he let loose a cry of rage at his predicament. Naruto suddenly ducked as the girl swung her giant fan at his head, almost taking it off as her momentum made her slam it into the ground, creating a crater where it hit. "Are you crazy? That could have killed me," Naruto shouted, making Tamari almost fall over in shock before she started swinging at him again. "That's the point, you stupid baka," she yelled as Naruto continued to jump, dodge, and evade her every swing. "So close that time," Naruto said as he dodged again. "Nope, try again." Needless to say, Tamari was getting very annoyed with the blonde boy's antics. "Stay still and die already." Tamari yelled as she charged Naruto. "No, I don't think so," Naruto said as he jumped over her attack. Tamari turned and faced Naruto, deciding she had enough of his tricks. Her fan opened all the way, making Naruto's eyes widen as he saw what was coming next. "Hamatachi no Jutsu." Tamari shouted as she swung her fan at Naruto and a tornado of wind ripped towards Naruto. Naruto dodged as best he could, but the winds generated glanced his shoulders, forcing Naruto to roll on the ground before jumping backwards to his feet as Tamari slammed her fan onto the spot he was just a moment ago. Tamari swung her fan, making a powerful gust of wind rip through the clearing, picking up rock and debris. Lucky Naruto, he had pushed Chakra to his feet just in time, anchoring himself to the ground as he raised his arms to his face, protecting himself from the flying fragments of earth. "This will get you." Damari shouted as she swung her fan again. Naruto watched in shock as the winds ripped the earth up as it headed towards him. Kuzo. Naruto shouted as he vainly tried to dodge the attack as it cut into one of his arms and legs as he dodged, leaving deep cuts in the limbs.